Imagine taking a simple DNA test and discovering that your entire life has been a lie. What would you do? This story will take you through a roller coaster of emotions, mystery, betrayal, and an unbelievable truth. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Stories TH for more thrilling stories. Let's get started. The story begins in two seemingly ordinary yet starkly different households in New Jersey. Olivia Reed, 16 years old, a lively and ambitious teenager. Olivia is a natural leader and an exceptional basketball player. With her striking red hair and deep blue eyes, she stands out in any crowd. Always the first to volunteer for a challenge, Olivia thrives on competition, whether it's on the court or in the classroom. She has a strong bond with her father, Daniel Reed, a meticulous bank executive who values discipline and structure. Her mother, Margaret Reed, is a devoted homemaker who ensures their home always feels warm and welcoming. Hannah Mitchell, 16 years old, the complete opposite of Olivia. Hannah is reserved, artistic, and introspective. With her golden blonde curls and amber-colored eyes, she carries an air of quiet elegance. Hannah finds solace in painting, often spending hours in her makeshift studio, losing herself in the strokes of her brush. Her father, Dr. Robert Mitchell, is a respected university professor known for his deep intellect and philosophical discussions. Meanwhile, her mother, Elaine Mitchell, is an established artist known for her stunning yet unconventional artwork. Though Olivia and Hannah's lives unfold in parallel, the contrast between their families is striking. The Reed family, a classic middle-class household with strong traditional values. Daniel Reed, Olivia's father, believes in structure, routine, and hard work. Margaret Reed, her mother, dedicates herself to being the backbone of the household, ensuring everything runs smoothly. Their house is modest but well-kept, decorated with family photos, sports trophies, and Olivia's academic achievements. The Mitchell family, a creative, intellectual environment where curiosity and artistic freedom are encouraged. Dr. Robert Mitchell is a firm believer in education and self-expression, often engaging in thought-provoking discussions with his students and family. Elaine Mitchell, a free spirit, prefers an unstructured life, allowing Hannah the creative freedom to explore different forms of art. Their home is filled with artistic chaos, paintings leaning against the walls, books stacked high, and an air of philosophical debate at the dinner table. These two families, though seemingly unconnected, have been friends for years, bound by a history they have never questioned until now. From an outsider's perspective, the Reed and Mitchell families share a long-standing friendship that appears genuine and unbreakable. The two families frequently gather for holiday celebrations, birthday parties, and summer barbecues, a tradition that started when Daniel and Robert met during a business conference years ago. Despite their vastly different parenting styles, they have always respected each other's methods, agreeing that raising good children is what matters most. Olivia and Hannah grew up together, sharing countless childhood memories, yet they were never as close as their parents had hoped. Unlike the effortless, natural friendships that often bloom in childhood, Olivia and Hannah's relationship is built more on familiarity than a deep emotional connection. They rarely argue, but have little in common beyond their shared history. Olivia's competitive nature and love for sports make her thrive in social settings, whereas Hannah prefers the solitude of her art studio. At family events, Olivia is the first to engage in friendly competition, challenging their cousins to races or basketball games. Meanwhile, Hannah is content sketching in a quiet corner, capturing the moment in charcoal or watercolor. Despite these differences, no one questions their bond. They are family friends, practically sisters in a way, and that has always been enough. Yet, over the years, small but unspoken peculiarities begin to surface. The physical differences between Olivia and her parents are often brushed aside as genetics being unpredictable. After all, red hair is uncommon in the Reed family, but it's chalked up to a distant ancestor. Similarly, Hannah doesn't resemble either of her parents very closely, but people simply assume she takes after a long-lost grandparent. Teachers, neighbors, and even distant relatives have occasionally commented on how odd it is that Olivia and Hannah don't resemble their respective families. However, the Reeds and Mitchells always laughed it off, never taking it seriously. The families continue their intertwined lives, moving through the motions of what appears to be a perfect friendship between two well-connected households. But soon, one simple decision will unravel everything. A decision that will bring to light secrets buried for over 16 years. A storm is brewing. For now, everything seems normal. The Reed and Mitchell families enjoy a seemingly peaceful life, filled with shared celebrations and cherished traditions. Olivia and Hannah continue to grow up side by side, each embracing the life that has been shaped for them. Yet beneath the surface, subtle cracks begin to form, cracks that have been there all along but were overlooked, ignored, or simply dismissed. Soon, a single moment will shatter the illusion of normalcy, sending both families spiraling into a whirlwind of doubt, betrayal, and shocking revelations. What happens when a DNA test unravels a lifelong lie? What happens when you realize you've been living the wrong life all along? The truth is coming, and once it's uncovered, nothing will ever be the same again. The biology class DNA project. Life was moving forward as usual, with Olivia focused on her upcoming basketball tournament and Hannah preparing for a local art exhibition. Neither of them had any reason to suspect that one simple school project would change everything. It all started with a biology assignment at Westwood High School, where both Olivia and Hannah were juniors. Their biology teacher, Mr. Calloway, was passionate about making science engaging. He believed that learning about genetics through real-life applications would help students develop a deeper interest in biology. One afternoon, he announced a class project that would explore genetic heritage using commercial DNA testing kits. Genetics tells us who we are and where we come from, Mr. Calloway explained as he passed out the test kits. This project will help you trace your ancestry and understand the science behind inherited traits. It's a fun and insightful way to see the story written in your DNA. At first, Olivia and Hannah weren't particularly interested. Olivia saw it as nothing more than a fun activity, an easy way to get extra credit for a science grade. Hannah, on the other hand, loved history and anthropology, so she was curious about what her DNA might reveal about her family's European roots. Their friends joined in enthusiastically, treating the project like a social experiment, eager to compare results and joke about their genetic surprises. Even though Olivia and Hannah weren't best friends, they decided to submit their tests together, swabbing their cheeks and sealing their samples with zero expectations. Wouldn't it be funny if we turn out to be long-lost cousins? Olivia joked as they placed their test kits into the designated envelope. Or royalty, Hannah added with a small laugh. Neither of them could have imagined the storm that was about to come. The shocking results. A few weeks later, the students gathered in class, excited to receive their DNA results. Mr. Calloway had arranged for the genetic testing company to send results directly to the school, making it easier for students to review their ancestry reports together. One by one, students opened their results, laughing over unexpected discoveries. A girl who thought she was 100% Irish found out she had Middle Eastern ancestry. A boy who had always been told his family was Italian found out he had significant Scandinavian roots. Olivia was eager to see if her Scottish and Irish ancestry checked out, while Hannah was excited to confirm her German heritage. Then, the moment came. As Olivia and Hannah clicked on their digital results, the entire room seemed to blur. The screen displayed their ethnic breakdown, but that wasn't the issue. What caught their attention was the family match section, which showed something impossible. Instead of listing their parents as genetic matches, the system flagged them as unrelated to their supposed families. "There has to be a mistake," Olivia muttered, refreshing the page. But no matter how many times she reloaded the results, the data remained unchanged. Olivia Reed's DNA did not match Daniel and Margaret Reed. Hannah Mitchell's DNA did not match Robert and Elaine Mitchell. The realization hit them like a punch to the stomach. Something was wrong. Very wrong. A doctor's reaction that changed everything. Mr. Calloway noticed their shocked expressions and walked over. "Everything okay, girls?" he asked, concerned. Hannah, her face pale, handed him her tablet. Olivia did the same. The teacher frowned as he scanned the results, his expression shifting from mild curiosity to deep concern. "Let me get this straight," he said, lowering his voice. "Your DNA results are saying that neither of you are related to your parents?" Olivia and Hannah nodded silently, still too stunned to speak. That was when Mr. Calloway did something no other student had experienced that day. He took their tablets and walked out of the room. Confused, the girls glanced at each other, then followed him. They found him in the teacher's office, making a phone call. His voice was low but urgent. He repeated their names. He mentioned a possible clerical error, but the tension in his voice suggested something much more serious. After several moments, he ended the call and turned to them. "I need you both to go home and talk to your parents." "Why?" Olivia demanded, her stomach twisting. Mr. Calloway hesitated before answering. "Because I just spoke with the lab, and they're going to verify your results. But if they're correct, there may have been a mistake at birth." The words hit them like ice water. A mistake at birth? A call that changed everything. By the time Olivia and Hannah left school, their minds were spinning. Could this be real? Could the lab have made a mistake? Could their entire lives be built on a lie? Neither of them could shake the horrifying thought, what if they had been switched at birth? That night, as they tried to process the shocking revelation, a phone call came in. It was from the DNA testing company. The voice on the other end was calm, but serious. They needed to speak with Olivia and Hannah's families immediately. "We've double-checked the results," the woman on the line said, "and we need to report an anomaly." Olivia, gripping her phone tightly, could barely breathe. "An anomaly?" she echoed. The woman hesitated. "Your DNA profile matches another entry in our system, but it's not your parents." A sinking feeling settled in Olivia's chest. "Then who does it match?" she asked. There was a long pause before the woman finally answered. "Each other." The world spun. Olivia and Hannah weren't just unrelated to their families. They were genetically identical in ways that suggested something much worse. They had been switched. The news hit not only their parents, but also the authorities. The hospital where they were born was notified. A detective unit was called in to review old records. Something sinister might have happened 16 years ago. And suddenly, a school project had turned into a full-blown investigation. The beginning of the end. By the next morning, Olivia and Hannah found themselves in a whirlwind of chaos. Their parents were summoned to meet with doctors and lawyers. The police began looking into the hospital records from the year they were born. Reporters got wind of the story, and soon, news vans were parked outside their schools. Everything they thought they knew about their lives, their families, and their identities was crumbling before their eyes. And the worst part? This was just the beginning. A sudden, unexplainable separation. The revelation of Olivia and Hannah's DNA test results had caused an explosion within both families. One moment, they had been normal teenage girls, worrying about exams, basketball games, and art competitions. The next, they had become the center of a shocking discovery, one that threatened to tear their lives apart. And before they could even process it, everything changed overnight. Olivia's abrupt move. The morning after the DNA test confirmed the mismatch, Olivia woke up to find her parents packing her things. "What's going on?" she demanded, panic setting in as she saw her father stuffing her basketball gear into a duffel bag. Margaret Reed, her mother, avoided eye contact as she hurriedly folded Olivia's clothes. "Sweetheart, it's just for a little while," she said, her voice strained. "What do you mean a little while? Where am I going?" Olivia's voice rose. Her father, Daniel, finally turned to face her, his jaw clenched. "You're going to stay with your Aunt Carol. It's for the best." Olivia's stomach dropped. Aunt Carol lived 2 hours away, in a quiet suburban neighborhood where Olivia had only visited a few times. "Why? I don't understand. I didn't do anything wrong." Margaret's hands trembled as she placed them on Olivia's shoulders. "It's complicated, Liv. Please trust us." But Olivia didn't trust them. Not anymore. Something felt wrong, and no one was telling her the truth. Hannah's unexpected relocation. Across town, Hannah faced a similar fate. She woke up to her mother, Elaine, standing at the foot of her bed, her face pale and unreadable. Her father, Robert, was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't slept all night. Without any warning, Elaine handed Hannah a packed suitcase. "You're going to stay with Aunt Marion for a while." Hannah's heart skipped a beat. "Aunt Marion?" she repeated. "She lives 6 hours away. Why would I go there?" Elaine's lips pressed together tightly. "It's just temporary, honey. We need some space to figure things out." Figure things out. The words sent a cold chill down Hannah's spine. She turned to Robert, hoping for an explanation, but his face was blank, distant. Hannah felt her throat tighten. "Are you sending me away because of the DNA test?" Neither of them answered. That silence was louder than any words could have been, cutting off communication. Before either of them had time to fight back or resist, they were taken away. Olivia was driven to Aunt Carol's house that afternoon, with her parents barely speaking a word during the entire trip. Hannah was put on a bus, alone, watching her hometown disappear in the distance. And what was worse, their phones were taken away. Olivia's mother had disabled her cell phone service, leaving her without any way to contact Hannah. Hannah's parents blocked her from using social media, cutting her off completely. It was as if their families were trying to erase everything overnight. And neither Olivia nor Hannah understood why. The first clues. Days passed, then a week. Both girls found themselves isolated, in unfamiliar houses, with no access to their usual lives. But if their families thought that separating them would make them stop asking questions, they were wrong. Hannah's discovery, the photograph. Hannah had always been quiet and observant, and her time at Aunt Marion's house only sharpened those instincts. One evening, while her aunt was out grocery shopping, Hannah decided to do something she had never dared before: snoop through her mother's things. She opened her backpack, where she had managed to hide a small key she had taken from her mother's dresser before leaving home. She knew that key belonged to her mother's locked drawer in her bedroom. It had always been off limits, and now Hannah wanted to know why. Her heart pounded as she unlocked the drawer and rummaged through the stacks of papers, letters, and documents inside. And then she found it. A photograph. It was old, slightly faded, and creased at the edges. But what made Hannah freeze in shock was what the picture showed. It was a photo of her mother, Elaine, standing in a hospital room. She was holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. But the baby had red hair. Hannah had blonde hair. Olivia had red hair. A slow, sickening realization washed over Hannah. The baby in that picture wasn't her. So who was it? Olivia's discovery. The birth certificate. Meanwhile, Olivia was facing her own suspicions. She had been at Aunt Carol's house for over a week now, and she felt like a prisoner. Her aunt barely let her leave the house. Every time Olivia asked about her parents, she was told to just be patient. She had no phone, no way to contact Hannah, and no answers. But one thing she did have, her curiosity. Late one night, after her aunt had gone to sleep, Olivia decided to do some digging. She remembered seeing a box of old family documents in the upstairs storage room. It had been gathering dust for years. She figured it wouldn't hurt to look through it. She tiptoed up the stairs, careful not to make a sound, and opened the heavy wooden box. Inside, she found old letters, photographs, and official documents. And then she saw it. Her birth certificate. But something was wrong. The date of birth on the certificate was different from the one she had always known. Not just by a few days, but by 2 entire months. She frantically dug deeper into the pile of documents and found another hospital record. One document listed her birth date as February 10th, 2006. The hospital document said December 15th, 2005. 2 different dates. 2 different places. A wave of dizziness hit her. "This isn't possible," she whispered to herself. But it was. And now, Olivia knew for sure her parents had been hiding something. The beginning of a dangerous truth. Neither Olivia nor Hannah had spoken to each other since the day they were separated. But as they sat in their separate, unfamiliar homes, staring at their discoveries, they both realized one thing. This wasn't just a simple mistake at the hospital. There was a reason their families were keeping them apart. There was a reason they were being silenced. And whatever the truth was, it was something their parents never wanted them to find out. But it was too late. Because Olivia and Hannah had just begun uncovering the truth, and they weren't going to stop. Phần 4. Bước đầu điều tra. Tracing the hospital records. Olivia's desperate call. The discovery of her birth certificate discrepancies had left Olivia feeling lost and angry. She needed answers, and she needed them now. After spending days being stonewalled by her Aunt Carol, she decided to take matters into her own hands. One morning, while her aunt was in the backyard, Olivia snuck into the home office and grabbed the landline phone. She had memorized the name of the hospital on her birth certificate, St. Mary's Medical Center. Her hands trembled as she dialed the patient records department. A woman's voice answered, calm and professional. St. Mary's Medical Center. How may I assist you? Olivia swallowed hard. Hi, I need to check a birth record. Mine, actually. Of course. What is your full name and date of birth? Olivia gave her the information from her birth certificate. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, but there are no records for an Olivia Reed born on that date at our facility. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. That can't be right, she said, gripping the phone tighter. I have a birth certificate that says I was born there. The woman hesitated before responding. Miss Reed, I don't know what to tell you. There's no record of your birth. If you'd like, you can come in and speak with someone in person. But I'm sorry, I have to go now. Have a nice day. Click. The line went dead. Olivia stood frozen, the dial tone buzzing in her ear. Something was seriously wrong. Hannah's surveillance. While Olivia was chasing dead ends, Hannah had begun her own investigation. She knew her parents were hiding something, and she was determined to find out what. So, for the past 2 nights, she had stayed up late, quietly listening to their hushed conversations in the kitchen. They whispered in anxious voices, speaking in half-sentences that didn't quite make sense. Every time she got closer, they stopped talking altogether. Then, on the 3rd night, she finally got a clue. She was walking past her father's study when she saw him unlocking a filing cabinet and pulling out a metal box. He opened it just enough for Hannah to see stacks of documents inside. She couldn't make out the details, but one thing caught her eye. A hospital logo. Her heartbeat quickened. She had no idea what was in that box, but she knew it had something to do with her. And she was going to find out what. Confronting their parents. Olivia's questioning turns to desperation. After her failed call to the hospital, Olivia had had enough. That evening, she stormed into the kitchen where her mother, Margaret, was making dinner. Mom, I need to ask you something. Margaret barely glanced up from the stove. Sure, sweetheart. What is it? Olivia's hands curled into fists. Was I adopted? The words hung in the air like a ticking time bomb. Margaret froze. The wooden spoon in her hand stopped stirring. The color drained from her face. And for the first time in Olivia's life, her mother looked afraid. What kind of question is that? Margaret finally said, her voice unsteady. A serious one. Olivia shot back. I called the hospital where I was supposedly born, and they don't have any record of me. Can you explain that? Margaret turned off the stove and set the spoon down carefully. Olivia, listen to me. No, Olivia snapped. I don't want excuses. I want the truth. Why was my birth record erased? Why was I sent away? What are you hiding from me? Margaret took a deep breath, her eyes darting toward the kitchen doorway, almost as if she expected Olivia's father to step in and save her from this conversation. But Daniel wasn't home. It was just the two of them, and Olivia was done being lied to. Finally, her mother spoke. There are things about your past that are complicated, but I promise you, we did what we thought was best for you. That's not an answer. Olivia yelled. Margaret flinched, guilt flashing in her eyes. You don't understand, Olivia. If we tell you everything, it could put you in danger. Danger? Olivia's blood ran cold. Danger from who? But Margaret just shook her head and turned away. I can't tell you. Not yet. Olivia felt sick. Her own mother was hiding the truth from her, and now she was talking about danger? What the hell was going on? Hannah gets caught. Unlike Olivia, Hannah had no intention of confronting her parents directly, not yet. She was planning to sneak into her father's study after everyone had gone to bed and look inside that metal box. She waited until midnight, when the house was dark and silent. Her hands trembled as she crept toward her father's office door, carefully turning the knob. She had just managed to slip inside and kneel by the filing cabinet when a voice cut through the darkness. "What do you think you're doing?" Hannah's heart stopped. She whirled around to see her father standing in the doorway, his face twisted in rage. Her mother was behind him, her expression tight with fear. Hannah stammered. Robert strode forward and grabbed her by the arm, pulling her to her feet. "Were you snooping through my things?" he demanded. Hannah yanked her arm away. "Why are you so mad? What are you hiding from me?" Her father's jaw tightened. "You don't understand what you're doing, Hannah. You're playing with things that should be left alone." Her mother grabbed his arm. "Robert, please. She's just a child." "Not anymore," he snapped. "She doesn't get to act like this was a mistake." She knew what she was doing. Hannah took a step back, her chest tightening with fear. "I just want to know the truth," she whispered. Her father's expression darkened. "Then stop looking for it." And then he locked the metal box in the safe. The unavoidable truth. By the end of that night, both Olivia and Hannah realized something terrifying. Their parents weren't just avoiding the truth, they were actively trying to bury it. They weren't just lying, they were afraid. But the worst part? Their own families were willing to keep them in the dark, even if it meant keeping them trapped in a life built on lies. But Olivia and Hannah had come too far to stop now. They were going to uncover the truth, even if it meant risking everything. The dangerous meeting. The secret plan. It had been weeks since Olivia and Hannah had seen each other. Ever since the DNA test results shattered their lives, their parents had kept them apart, acting as if separation would erase the truth. But it only made them more determined. Olivia had found nothing at the hospital, her records were gone. Hannah had discovered a metal box in her father's office, but had been caught before she could open it. Their parents refused to answer their questions, only offering cryptic warnings. If they wanted the truth, they had to find it themselves. And they had to do it together. So, late one night, Olivia and Hannah used a burner phone to arrange a secret meeting. They chose a small coffee shop on the outskirts of town, a place where no one would recognize them, a place where they could talk freely. The Cafe Encounter. Hannah arrived first, slipping into a dimly lit corner booth, her hood pulled low over her face. Every few seconds, she glanced over her shoulder, nervous that her parents had somehow followed her. 5 minutes later, the door swung open, and Olivia rushed in, looking just as paranoid. She slid into the seat across from Hannah, pulling off her jacket, her hands shaking from adrenaline. "Are you okay?" Hannah asked in a whisper. Olivia nodded, but her eyes were wild with fear and determination. "We don't have much time," she said. "Tell me everything." Hannah took a deep breath, lowering her voice. "My dad has a metal box in his office. I saw a hospital logo on one of the documents inside. But before I could grab it, he caught me and locked it away." Olivia leaned in closer. "Do you know which hospital?" Hannah shook her head. "No, but my dad told my mom that I needed to stop looking for answers. He said I was playing with things that should be left alone." Olivia's stomach turned. "My mom said something similar," she muttered. "She told me if I knew the truth, I'd be in danger." Danger. Both their parents had said the same thing. But danger from who? Piecing the clues together, they sat in tense silence, staring at each other. Then, Olivia pulled something from her bag, a printout of her birth certificate. "Look at the date." Hannah frowned, scanning the paper. "March 15th, 2007. Olivia nodded. "Now look at this." She slid over another document, a hospital admission record she had stolen from her aunt's filing cabinet. Hannah's breath caught in her throat. The date of admission? January 12th, 2007. That's 2 months before you were supposedly born. Olivia clenched her fists. Exactly. There's no way my mom was in the hospital that early unless... The words caught in her throat. Unless she wasn't her mom. Hannah swallowed hard. "Olivia, I think we were switched at birth." The terrifying warning. An unknown message. Just as the realization settled over them, Olivia's phone buzzed on the table. She grabbed it, expecting a message from her aunt or mother. But instead, it was from an unknown number. Her heart pounded as she read the text aloud. "Stop digging. You don't know who you're up against." A cold chill ran down her spine. Hannah snatched the phone from Olivia's hands, staring at the message in disbelief. "Who sent this?" she whispered. Olivia's hand shook. "I don't know." A second later, another text appeared. "I was there the night it happened. Leave it alone before it's too late." Hannah's blood ran cold. "Someone knows," she murmured. "Someone was there when we were switched." They exchanged a fearful glance. Someone had been watching them. Someone knew the truth, and that person was warning them to stop searching. But instead of scaring them away, the message only fueled their determination. They weren't going to stop. Not now. Not until they knew everything. A hidden ally? Olivia took a deep breath, then typed a response. "Who are you?" For a moment, there was no reply. Then, 3 dots appeared, signaling the sender was typing. Finally, a message came through. "Meet me tomorrow at 10 p.m. Back entrance of St. Mary's Hospital. Come alone." St. Mary's Hospital. The place Olivia had called. The place where her birth records were missing. Hannah's heart pounded. This could be a trap. Olivia nodded. Or it could be our only chance to find out the truth. They sat in tense silence, the weight of the message pressing down on them. Someone out there knew the truth. Someone out there had seen what happened. And tomorrow, they were going to find out who, even if it meant walking straight into danger. Phần sáu, người đứng sau bóng tối. Breaking into the abandoned hospital. The plan to get inside. The next night, Olivia and Hannah stood outside St. Mary's Hospital, staring up at the dark, lifeless building. The place had been shut down for years, its windows boarded up, its walls covered in peeling paint. But somewhere inside, their records still existed, and they were going to find them. "Are you sure about this?" Hannah whispered, clutching her hoodie tightly against the cold night air. Olivia nodded. "We have to know the truth." They had done their research. The main entrance was locked and monitored by security cameras. The side doors were chained shut, but there was a maintenance entrance in the back that hadn't been used in years. And that was their way in, the entrance to the unknown. Carefully, they crept around the side of the building, their hearts pounding with every step. The rusted door groaned as Olivia pried it open with a crowbar she had borrowed from her uncle's garage. A musty, stale scent filled the air as they slipped inside. The hospital was a ghost town. Flickering emergency lights cast eerie shadows along the walls. Old gurneys were overturned, their wheels rusted from time. Stacks of abandoned files sat untouched, covered in thick layers of dust. "We need to find a records room," Olivia whispered, pulling out a flashlight. They moved carefully, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Each turn revealed more signs of abandonment. Cobweb hallways, scattered medical charts, a lone wheelchair sitting in the middle of the hallway, as if someone had just stepped away from it. Hannah shivered. "This place gives me the creeps." Olivia ignored her and checked the map she had printed from old hospital blueprints. "The records room is on the 3rd floor." But as they reached the staircase, they saw something that made their stomachs drop. The entire floor had been sealed off. A thick chain and a large padlock blocked their way, and attached to it was a bright yellow notice that read, "Sealed by order of the state. No entry permitted." The warning from a guard. Hannah cursed under her breath. Now what? Before Olivia could respond, a light flickered down the hall. Someone was coming. They ducked behind an old reception desk, barely breathing. A security guard walked past them, a flashlight sweeping the halls. He was older, his uniform slightly wrinkled, and he looked more exhausted than threatening. Olivia exchanged a glance with Hannah. Maybe they could talk their way out of this. Taking a deep breath, Olivia stepped into the light. "Sir, please." The guard whirled around, his hand hovering over the radio on his belt. "Who are you? How'd you get in here?" Hannah quickly stepped up beside Olivia. We need to see the records," she admitted. "It's important." The guard's eyes darkened. "You need to leave." "But now," he hissed, glancing around as if checking for someone watching. There was fear in his eyes. As if he wasn't just worried about them being caught, he was worried about what would happen if they stayed. "Listen," Olivia said, desperation in her voice. "Something happened here. Something that involved us. Please, if you know anything." The guard hesitated. Then, in a low, urgent voice, he whispered, "I don't know what you're looking for, but trust me when I say you don't want to find it." With that, he turned away, disappearing into the shadows. The mysterious black SUV. An unwelcome presence. The second Olivia and Hannah stepped out of the hospital, they felt it. A chill in the air. A sensation of being watched. Then, as they reached the sidewalk, they saw it. A black SUV parked across the street, its engine running, its windows tinted so dark they couldn't see inside. "That's been there the whole time," Hannah whispered. "I don't know," Olivia murmured, gripping her phone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the SUV's headlights flicked on. The car lurched forward, rolling toward them at a slow, deliberate pace. Not speeding, not chasing, just watching. The man who knew too much. Panic shot through Olivia's veins. "Run," she hissed. They darted into a nearby alley, their footsteps pounding against the pavement. The SUV didn't follow, but they knew it didn't have to. It was a warning. They didn't stop running until they reached a busy intersection, surrounded by the safety of crowds. Breathless, they turned around and froze. A man stood across the street, watching them, dressed in a dark coat, his face partially hidden by shadows. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with a sharp gaze that sent chills down Olivia's spine. And then, he started walking toward them. The cryptic message. "Who is that?" Hannah whispered, gripping Olivia's arm. "I don't know," Olivia admitted. The man stopped a few feet away. Then, in a voice low but urgent, he spoke. "You two need to stop. You don't understand who you're dealing with." Olivia's stomach twisted. "Who are you?" she demanded. The man ignored her question. "They know you're looking," he said. "And if you keep digging, you won't like what you find." Olivia's heart pounded in her ears. "Why? What happened at that hospital?" The man hesitated. For the briefest second, a flicker of regret crossed his face. Then he whispered, "The truth isn't something you want. But if you insist on finding it, you better be ready for the consequences." And with that, he turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Olivia and Hannah staring after him, more afraid than ever before. Mang Moi Do Dien, discovering a doctor's name, breaking into the family lawyer's office. The night was quiet as Olivia and Hannah crouched behind a row of bushes, staring up at the Mitchell and Carter law firm building. "Are you sure about this?" Hannah whispered, shifting uncomfortably. "We have no choice," Olivia replied, her heart pounding. After the SUV incident and the mysterious man's warning, they knew one thing. Their families were hiding something, and the answers might be locked away inside their parents' lawyer's office. Inside the office, using a hairpin, Olivia worked the back door's lock. Click! The door creaked open. They slipped inside, the dim glow of the streetlights barely illuminating the reception area. Everything smelled like old paper and leather-bound books, the air thick with the scent of law and secrecy. "We need to find the client records," Olivia whispered. They moved through the hallways, ducking under security cameras. In the corner office, a metal filing cabinet stood against the wall. Olivia tugged on the drawer locked. Hannah glanced around, then spotted a set of keys on the desk. With shaking hands, Olivia unlocked the cabinet and rifled through the files until she found what they were looking for. Mitchell read 2006 birth records. Her breath caught as she flipped through the documents. Then she froze. One name had been blacked out on their birth certificates, but under the ink, faint enough to still be legible, was the name. Dr. Philip Reynolds. Olivia and Hannah exchanged a look. "Who is this guy?" Hannah whispered. "I don't know," Olivia said, "but he worked at St. Mary's. And if his name was covered up, he must have something to do with what happened to us." Before they could process it further, they heard footsteps approaching from outside. "We have to go," Olivia hissed, shoving the file into her jacket. They bolted out the back door, disappearing into the night just as a security guard rounded the corner. Confronting their parents again, Olivia's mother avoids the truth. The next morning, Olivia sat across from her mother in the kitchen, gripping the birth certificate so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Who is Dr. Philip Reynolds?" she asked, her voice shaking. Her mother froze mid-sip of coffee. Then, slowly, she set the mug down and folded her hands. "Where did you hear that name?" Olivia slammed the document on the table. "It was on my birth certificate. Why was his name covered up?" Her mother looked away. "Olivia, sometimes there are things you don't need to know." "I do need to know." Her mother sighed. "We did what was right. You have to trust me." Olivia felt her stomach drop. What does that even mean? Her mother refused to answer. And in that moment, Olivia knew. She was lying. Hannah overhears a secret conversation. Meanwhile, at the Mitchell household, Hannah's parents were whispering in the living room. She pressed her ear against the door, holding her breath. "We have a problem," her father said. "They know too much," a third voice replied. A voice Hannah didn't recognize. "What do we do?" her mother asked. A pause. Then, in a low, cold voice, the stranger said, "We take care of it." Immediately, Hannah clamped a hand over her mouth to stop from gasping. She backed away from the door, her heartbeat hammering. Who was that man? And what did he mean by take care of it? Whatever was going on, they were in more danger than they had ever imagined. Phun Tam, Guok Goi Un Zeng. A former nurse speaks out. The night was eerily silent when Olivia's phone vibrated on her nightstand. She frowned. Unknown caller. Her stomach churned as she hesitated, then answered. "Hello." A woman's voice, soft yet urgent, whispered on the other end. "Olivia Reed?" Her breath caught in her throat. "Who is this?" The woman exhaled shakily. "You don't know me, but I know you. I was there the night you were born." Goosebumps rose on Olivia's skin. "At St. Mary's Hospital?" "Yes," the woman said. "Listen to me carefully. You and Hannah, your births weren't an accident." Olivia's pulse pounded in her ears. "What do you mean?" "You were switched on purpose. And it wasn't the first time." A chilling revelation. Olivia sat up, gripping her blanket. "You're saying someone deliberately swapped us?" "Yes." "Why?" I don't know the full reason, but I know there were others. You weren't the only babies taken that night." Olivia felt the room spin. Who? Who else?" "I wish I could tell you." The woman's voice cracked. "But I only worked in the maternity ward for a short time. When I started asking questions, I was fired. Do you know who did this?" A long pause. Then, Dr. Philip Reynolds was involved. A chill ran down Olivia's spine. The same name they had found in the lawyer's office. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you're in danger, Olivia. If you keep digging, they will come for you." "Who?" "The people who made this happen. They don't want the truth getting out." A cryptic warning. Olivia's throat was dry. "Can we meet? Please, I need to know more." A hesitant pause. Then, the woman whispered, "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. City Park, near the old fountain." "How will I know it's you?" "I'll be wearing a blue scarf." "But Olivia, don't come alone. And if you see a black SUV, run." Then, click, the line went dead. Olivia stared at her phone, heart racing. She immediately dialed Hannah. "You need to come over. Now." Being followed. The next day, Olivia and Hannah sat inside a small coffee shop across from City Park. Outside, the fountain gurgled, its stone edges worn from time. "Are you sure this isn't a setup?" Hannah asked, her fingers wrapped around a coffee cup. "No," Olivia admitted. "But it's our only lead." They scanned the park. No one with a blue scarf. "What if she changed her mind?" Hannah murmured. Olivia chewed her lip. "Let's wait a few more minutes." The black SUV appears. That was when Olivia saw it. Parked across the street. A black SUV. Windows tinted. Engine running. Her stomach dropped. Hannah followed her gaze. "That's the same SUV from the hospital." Her pulse pounded. A man in a dark coat stepped out, talking into a phone. Then, he looked directly at them. "We need to leave. Now," Olivia whispered. A disappearing nurse. They hurried toward the exit, scanning for any sign of the nurse. Nothing. Then, Olivia's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered, but there was no voice. Just a single text. "Run." The color drained from Olivia's face. "Hannah. She's not coming." Then, from behind them, footsteps. Fast. Getting closer. They didn't look back. They ran. Nowhere is safe. Ducking into an alley, they pressed against the brick wall, gasping for breath. The SUV rolled past, its headlights sweeping the street. "This is bad," Hannah panted. Olivia clenched her fists. They got to her first. Hannah swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" Olivia's jaw tightened. "We find Dr. Reynolds." Because if the nurse was right, he held the answers to everything. Uncovering the New Horizons project. Discovering New Horizons. After their terrifying encounter at City Park, Olivia and Hannah knew they had to dig deeper. Someone was pulling the strings, and it all seemed to lead back to one name, Dr. Philip Reynolds. Back in Hannah's bedroom, they sat hunched over a laptop, scanning every search result tied to him. But it wasn't just Reynolds that caught their attention. A name kept appearing in connection with him. New Horizons Genetics Institute. What is that? Olivia asked, clicking the link. The screen loaded a sleek website with a tagline. Shaping the future of humanity, one life at a time. A chill ran down Hannah's spine. That sounds creepy. Olivia scrolled through the site. It was filled with vague information about genetic research, promising healthier, stronger generations and the optimization of human potential. But there was nothing specific. Then, Hannah's eyes widened. Look at this. She pointed to a small, hidden section of the page titled, Advanced Genetic Enhancements in Neonatal Development. They clicked on it, but instead of loading a page, access restricted. A login screen popped up. Why would a public research institute need restricted access? Olivia murmured. Hannah typed the name Philip Reynolds into the search bar. Nothing. Then she tried lawsuit. A single result popped up. New Horizons, Class Action Lawsuit 2003. A lawsuit, Olivia muttered, clicking the link. A lawsuit that vanished. The page loaded a legal document from over 15 years ago. The case was filed by a group of parents, accusing New Horizons of conducting unauthorized genetic experiments on infants. Their claims? Their children exhibited unnatural cognitive and physical traits. Some suffered from severe, unexplained illnesses. Others simply disappeared. Hannah felt her blood run cold. They were experimenting on babies? Olivia scrolled down to the list of plaintiffs. But one section was crossed out, the names were redacted. Why would they erase the names? Olivia whispered. Then she noticed something at the bottom of the page. Lawsuit dismissed. Lack of evidence. Hannah clenched her fists. They covered up. All the parents involved had been silenced. But there was one person still tied to the case. Dr. Philip Reynolds, former lead geneticist at New Horizons. Next to his name. Status. Missing since 2004. He disappeared? Olivia muttered. Hannah bit her lip. Or someone made him disappear. Silence fell over the room. Then, Olivia stared at the screen with determination. We need to find him. Hannah hesitated. If he's been missing for almost 20 years, what if we're too late? Olivia turned to her, eyes blazing. If we don't find him, we might never find out who we really are. Hannah exhaled, then nodded, because deep down, she knew Olivia was right. This wasn't just about their past anymore. It was about uncovering the truth before it was erased forever. Tracking down Dr. Reynolds. 10.1. Breaking into Dr. Reynolds' abandoned office. The next lead was clear. If they wanted answers, they had to find Dr. Philip Reynolds. But there was one problem. He had been missing for almost 2 decades. Despite this, Olivia and Hannah were determined. Late at night, they drove to the last known address tied to his name, a small, abandoned clinic on the outskirts of town. The building was in complete disrepair, shattered windows, rusted signage, and overgrown weeds surrounding the entrance. Are we sure about this? Hannah whispered. Olivia took a deep breath. If Reynolds left something behind, this is our best shot. The door was locked, but after some effort, Olivia managed to push it open. Inside, the clinic was a ghost town, dust-covered furniture, overturned filing cabinets, and old medical posters peeling off the walls. Whatever happened here, it was clear someone wanted it erased. As they moved cautiously, Hannah noticed a nameplate covered in dust. Dr. Philip Reynolds, lead geneticist. This was definitely his office, Hannah murmured. They searched every drawer, every shelf, but most of the documents were missing or destroyed. Then, Hannah spotted an old filing cabinet with a broken lock. She yanked it open. Inside was a single, unmarked USB drive. This might be it, Olivia whispered, pocketing it. But before they could celebrate, a noise came from outside. Someone was there. Olivia quickly turned off her flashlight. Through a crack in the window, they saw a black SUV parked outside. Then, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. They weren't alone. Olivia grabbed Hannah's wrist and pulled her into a storage closet just as the door swung open. A man in a suit stepped in, scanning the room. He was looking for something, or rather, someone. They held their breath as he walked past their hiding spot, his boots clicking against the floor. Then, he left. They waited a full minute before Olivia whispered, "We need to go. Now." Clutching the USB tightly, they slipped out through the back exit and disappeared into the night. A warning from a mysterious stranger. Back at Hannah's house, they immediately plugged the USB in her laptop. Small Blue Diamond, a single folder appeared on the screen. Small Blue Diamond, New Horizons, classified files. Hannah clicked on it. Inside were dozens of documents, scanned forms, and lab reports. But what caught their attention was a folder labeled Small Blue Diamond, Neonatal Genetic Modification, Phase 2. Inside were detailed reports of genetic alterations performed on newborns' intelligence enhancement, physical modifications, and immune system manipulations. Small Blue Diamond, it was proof. Small Blue Diamond, New Horizons have been altering babies, possibly including them. Then, Hannah found something even worse. Small Blue Diamond, a list of names. And among them, Small Blue Diamond, Olivia Reed. Small Blue Diamond, Hannah Mitchell. The room went silent. "We were part of this," Hannah whispered. But before they could process it, Small Blue Diamond, a loud knock on the front door. Hannah's stomach dropped. Olivia's heart pounded as she peeked out the window. Standing in the dark was a man in a trench coat and a hat, his face obscured by shadows. Then, Small Blue Diamond, he slipped a note under the door and disappeared into the night. Hannah hesitantly picked it up. There were only a few words scribbled in rushed handwriting. "You're in danger. Stop digging." But the last part sent chills down their spines. "They know who you are now." Hannah and Olivia looked at each other, their hands trembling. Small Blue Diamond, they had been found. And this time, Small Blue Diamond, there was no turning back. Confronting an insider. Tracking down another victim. The USB had revealed more than just classified documents. It held names, dozens of names. One of them stood out. Small Blue Diamond, Lisa Carter. According to the records, Lisa's child had been one of the earliest cases of forced baby swapping by New Horizons in 2005. Olivia and Hannah knew they had to find her. After a deep dive into public records and old news archives, they finally located an address in a quiet suburb on the outskirts of town. Small Blue Diamond, Lisa Carter, lived alone. As they approached her house, they noticed the worn-out exterior and an unkempt lawn, a stark contrast to the well-manicured neighborhoods around it. Something about it felt off. Hannah hesitated before knocking. A long pause. Then, the door creaked open just a little, revealing a tired-looking woman in her late 40s. Small Blue Diamond, her eyes were sunken, her hands shaking slightly. "Who are you?" Lisa asked warily, peering at them through the gap. "We need to talk about New Horizons," Olivia said carefully. The second they mentioned the name, Lisa's expression changed. She quickly looked around, then yanked them inside and bolted the door shut. Small Blue Diamond, paranoia hung in the air. Lisa led them to her dimly lit living room, where the walls were covered in newspaper clippings, medical records, and handwritten notes. She had been investigating, too. Small Blue Diamond for years. Hannah's eyes scanned the wall and stopped at a photo of a baby boy. Small Blue Diamond, her son. "What happened to him?" Olivia asked softly. Lisa's voice trembled. "My baby was taken from me." She sat down, rubbing her temples, as though reliving the nightmare. Small Blue Diamond, Lisa's child, was one of the failed experiments. She explained that New Horizons had been tampering with genetics for years, selecting babies, modifying their DNA, and then swapping them into different families to monitor the results. But not every child turned out right. Some of them, Lisa hesitated, tears in her eyes. Some of them didn't survive. Hannah and Olivia exchanged a horrified glance. Small Blue Diamond, this was bigger than they had imagined. "And the ones that did survive?" Olivia asked. Lisa clenched her jaw. They became part of something worse. She gestured toward an old folder on the coffee table. Inside were medical reports on children who had been in New Horizons program. Some showed signs of advanced intelligence. Some had enhanced physical abilities, but others, Small Blue Diamond, others had inexplicable illnesses, deformities, or mental instability. Small Blue Diamond, New Horizons had been playing God. They didn't just swap babies, Lisa said bitterly. They were running an experiment. And when things went wrong, they erased the evidence. Olivia's blood ran cold. Small Blue Diamond, were they experiments too? Before they could process it, Lisa suddenly froze, eyes darting toward the window. Small blue diamond, someone was outside. 11.2. First encounter with real danger. A shadow passed by the window. Small blue diamond, they had been followed. Lisa grabbed their arms and whispered, "You have to go. Now." Before they could react, a loud engine roared outside. Hannah peeked through the blinds. Small blue diamond, a black SUV, was idling in the street. "They found me," Lisa whispered. "They always do." Olivia grabbed her wrist. "Come with us." But Lisa shook her head. "It's too late for me." "But not for you." She shoved a small USB drive into Olivia's hand. "Take this. It's everything I've found. Go." Small blue diamond, bang. A loud thud came from outside. Someone was trying to break in. Hannah and Olivia didn't wait. They rushed to the back door, sprinting toward the alley behind Lisa's house. As they ran, a black car suddenly swerved onto the sidewalk, heading straight for them. Small blue diamond, they had no time to think. Olivia grabbed Hannah's hand and yanked her toward a narrow alleyway. The car skidded, its tires screeching against the pavement, but it was too big to fit into the alley. Small blue diamond, they had escaped for now. Panting, they pressed their backs against the wall, listening to the distant sound of doors slamming and men shouting. "They're trying to kill us," Hannah gasped. Olivia clutched the USB tightly. Small blue diamond, they needed to find out what was on it. Small blue diamond, and fast. Discovering the truth about the real parents. The exposed swap files. As Olivia and Hannah left the meeting with Lisa Carter, their minds raced with a mixture of fear, shock, and an insatiable need for answers. They now knew they had been deliberately switched at birth, but the burning question remained. Why? They decided that the next step had to be confronting Olivia's parents once and for all. Hannah, too, wanted to question her own parents, but Olivia had a stronger feeling that her parents were hiding something much bigger. That evening, Olivia and Hannah returned to Olivia's house, their hearts pounding with anticipation. As soon as Olivia stepped through the front door, she noticed an unusual silence in the house. Her parents were sitting stiffly on the couch, as if they had been expecting her. Her mother, Margaret Reed, looked especially nervous, clutching the hem of her sweater as she avoided Olivia's gaze. "I need to know the truth," Olivia demanded, standing tall. "Who am I really?" Her father, Richard Reed, sighed deeply and exchanged a look with his wife before gesturing for Olivia to sit. Hannah hesitated but stood close by, ready to support her friend. "Olivia," her mother's voice trembled, "we never wanted to hurt you. We love you." "That's not an answer," Olivia snapped. "I know I wasn't supposed to be your daughter. I know about New Horizons." Margaret's face paled. Richard rubbed his temples as if the weight of their secret had finally become unbearable. Finally, after a long pause, he said the words Olivia had both feared and expected. "You're right, Olivia. You're not our biological daughter." The air in the room felt suffocating. Olivia's breath caught in her throat, but she forced herself to stay strong. Margaret, tears welling in her eyes, reached for Olivia's hands. "We couldn't have children," she confessed. "We tried everything. And then we were approached by someone who said they could help us. New Horizons." Olivia pulled her hand away. "You pay to be part of this." Richard nodded. "They told us they had a way to guarantee a healthy, intelligent child. We didn't know what it really meant at the time. We just wanted a baby. And when the time came, they gave us you." Olivia's mind reeled. "You bought me?" she choked out. "Like some kind of experiment?" "No," Margaret insisted. "We didn't know about the swapping until much later. We only learned the truth when you were 5, but by then, we couldn't lose you." Hannah, standing to the side, was speechless. The enormity of what they had uncovered was beyond comprehension. If Olivia had been given to the Reeds, then where was her real family? And what about Hannah? Richard hesitated before adding, "There's something else you need to know. You weren't the only one. New Horizons, they did this with many children." Olivia's stomach churned. "How many?" she whispered. Margaret shook her head. "We don't know. But I swear, we never meant for this to happen. We thought we were giving you a better life." Olivia's hands curled into fists. A better life? A life built on stolen identities, deception, and corporate manipulation? She didn't even know who she truly was. She shot a glance at Hannah, who was equally stunned. If Olivia wasn't a Reed, then who was she? Hannah's voice was barely above a whisper. Did you ever find out where Olivia really came from? Richard hesitated, then slowly stood up and walked to his office. He returned with a small, locked box. After fumbling with the key, he opened it and pulled out a worn-out envelope. "This is all we have," he said, handing it to Olivia. "We found this in your medical records years ago, but we were afraid to look further." Olivia's fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a faded hospital form with a different name printed at the top. Elizabeth Grayson, Olivia's real mother. The world around her seemed to spin. She had a real family out there, a real mother. And all these years, they had been kept apart. She turned back to her parents, the people who had raised her, lied to her, but also loved her. "You should have told me," she whispered. "I had the right to know." Margaret sobbed into her hands. Richard simply looked broken, but Olivia couldn't stay. Not now. She had another door to open, and behind it, the real truth was waiting. Discovering the truth about the real parents. Olivia's biological mother. The name Elizabeth Grayson burned into Olivia's mind as she stared at the document in her trembling hands. The faded hospital records, retrieved from a USB, held the answers she had been searching for her real mother, a woman she had never met. A part of her had always wondered why she never quite fit in her family, why she felt different. Now, she had confirmation, but knowing the truth and accepting it were two completely different things. Hannah, sitting beside her in their dimly lit motel room, leaned in closer. "Are you ready for this?" she asked softly. Olivia swallowed hard. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I have to do it." Hannah nodded, understanding. "So what's the plan?" They spent the next few hours digging deeper into Elizabeth Grayson's identity. Using online directories and public records, they found an address in a quiet suburb outside of Philadelphia. She lived alone in a modest house, with no sign of a husband or other children. That night, Olivia barely slept. Thoughts of what her mother would be like consumed her. Would she recognize Olivia immediately? Would she welcome her, or had she moved on, leaving Olivia as a painful memory? By morning, she had made up her mind. It was time to meet Elizabeth Grayson. The journey to Philadelphia. The drive was long and tense. Olivia's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she and Hannah sped down the highway. Neither of them spoke much, the weight of the moment pressing heavily upon them. Halfway there, Hannah reached over and squeezed Olivia's arm. "No matter what happens, you're not alone," she reassured her. Olivia offered a weak smile. "Thanks, Hannah." As they neared the neighborhood, Olivia's nerves intensified. She checked the GPS again, her stomach twisting into knots. Finally, they arrived at a small, charming house with a well-kept garden. A porch swing swayed gently in the breeze, and the curtains inside were slightly parted. Someone was home. Olivia parked the car and took a deep breath. "This is it," she whispered. Hannah nodded. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No," Olivia decided. "I need to do this alone." Hannah stayed behind as Olivia walked up the stone pathway, each step feeling heavier than the last. She hesitated at the door, her heart pounding wildly, then finally knocked. Meeting Elizabeth Grayson. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing a woman in her late 40s with striking green eyes and auburn hair that looked hauntingly similar to Olivia's own. The woman frowned in confusion. "Yes. Can I help you?" Olivia's mouth went dry. She struggled to find her voice. "Are you Elizabeth Grayson?" The woman's expression grew cautious. "Who's asking?" Olivia took a shaky breath. "My name is Olivia Reed. I think I'm your daughter." Elizabeth's entire body stiffened. Her eyes darted over Olivia's face, searching for something: recognition, familiarity, the truth. Then, without warning, she stumbled back, pressing a hand to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It can't be." Tears welled in her eyes as she gripped the doorframe for support. Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. "It's true," Olivia continued. "I was switched at birth. I only found out recently. I have proof." Elizabeth's hand trembled as she gestured for Olivia to come inside. The truth revealed. The house was warm and smelled of lavender. Family photos lined the walls, but Olivia noticed something odd. There were no pictures of a baby, no old photos of a daughter. Elizabeth sat down on the couch, still in shock. "Tell me everything," she whispered. Olivia explained everything: New Horizons, the DNA test, the missing hospital records. She watched as Elizabeth's expression shifted from disbelief to devastation. Tears streamed down her face. "I always knew something wasn't right," she admitted. "They told me my daughter was stillborn, but I never believed them. I felt her. I knew she was alive." A painful silence filled the room. "Why didn't you fight it?" Olivia asked gently. Elizabeth swallowed hard. "I tried," she said. "I demanded answers, but the hospital shut me down. My husband, he didn't want to push it. He thought I was losing my mind. Eventually, I stopped asking, but I never stopped feeling." She reached forward and cupped Olivia's face in her hands. "And now you're here," she whispered. "You're really here." Olivia felt something inside her break. Years of confusion, of questions, of feeling like she didn't belong. Suddenly, everything made sense. She was home, unraveling the past. Over the next few hours, Olivia and Elizabeth talked about everything. Olivia learned that her biological father had passed away a few years ago. She also learned that she had an aunt and grandparents who had been searching for answers too. Elizabeth, in turn, learned about Olivia's life, the family she grew up with, the people who had raised her. "I don't know what to feel," Olivia admitted. "I love my parents, but I can't forgive them for lying to me." Elizabeth squeezed her hand. "You don't have to decide anything now," she said. "But no matter what, you will always have a place here." For the first time in a long time, Olivia felt whole. A new mission. As the evening wore on, Olivia's determination solidified. "This isn't just about me," she said. "There are others out there. Babies who were switched, families who were torn apart. We have to stop New Horizons." Elizabeth's eyes darkened. "If they did this to us, they've done it to many more." Hannah, who had been waiting outside, but listening through the window, finally stepped inside. "So what's the next step?" she asked. Olivia looked at both of them, her mind set. "We find the other children. We expose the truth. And we take New Horizons down." For the first time in weeks, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. A shocking reunion. Meeting Elizabeth Grayson. As Olivia stood at the doorstep, her heart pounded like a drum against her ribs. The moment she had been waiting for, dreading, yet longing for, was finally here. The woman who might hold all the answers stood just a few feet away, staring at her with wide, tear-filled eyes. Elizabeth Grayson was a woman in her late 40s, with auburn hair that had faded to a softer shade, but her striking green eyes mirrored Olivia's own. She stood frozen in the doorway, her hand trembling as she covered her mouth in shock. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the moment was suffocating. Then, Elizabeth took a shaky breath, and her voice cracked as she whispered, "Oh my God!" Tears welled in her eyes, and her legs seemed to give out beneath her. She reached for the doorframe to steady herself, shaking her head in disbelief. "Is it really you?" she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and heartbreak. Olivia swallowed the lump in her throat. I think so." Before she could say anything else, Elizabeth took a hesitant step forward and gently placed her hands on Olivia's face, as if trying to convince herself that she was real. Then, she broke down, pulling Olivia into a tight embrace. "I thought you were gone forever," she sobbed into Olivia's shoulder. They told me you were dead." The truth unveiled. After what felt like an eternity, Elizabeth pulled away, wiping her tears. She motioned for Olivia to come inside, her hands still shaking as she led her into the house. The living room was warm and inviting, but Olivia barely noticed the details. Her entire focus was on the woman in front of her, the woman who was supposed to be her mother. They sat down on the couch, and Elizabeth took a deep breath before speaking. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Something I've never told anyone before." Olivia's pulse quickened. "What is it?" Elizabeth looked away for a moment, as if gathering her strength. When she turned back, her eyes were full of sorrow. "You weren't born alone, Olivia," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You had a twin." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. A twin. Elizabeth nodded, tears streaming down her face. I gave birth to two beautiful baby girls. But something went wrong that night. The hospital told me that one of you didn't survive. She let out a shuddering sigh. But I never believed them. I felt it. Deep down I knew my baby wasn't gone. A cold chill ran down Olivia's spine. Could it be? She thought of Hannah, the girl who had always felt like a missing piece of her own soul. Hannah, Olivia whispered. Elizabeth frowned. Who? Olivia took a deep breath, her mind racing. Mom, I think I've already met my twin, revealing the connection. Elizabeth listened in stunned silence as Olivia told her everything: how she had met Hannah, how they had both taken the DNA test, and how they had discovered the horrifying truth about New Horizons. By the time she was finished, Elizabeth was gripping Olivia's hands so tightly it almost hurt. My baby, she murmured, as if trying to process the impossible. Both of you all these years, and I never knew. The pain in her voice was unbearable. Olivia had never seen someone so broken, so consumed by grief and longing. She squeezed Elizabeth's hands. We found each other, Mom. That has to mean something. Elizabeth nodded, trying to steady herself. We have to find her. I need to see her. I need to tell her the truth. Olivia reached for her phone and quickly dialed Hannah's number. Her hands shook as she held the phone to her ear. After a few rings, Hannah's voice came through the line. Olivia, you need to come here, Olivia said, her voice urgent. You need to meet someone. The moment of truth. Less than an hour later, Hannah arrived. She stepped into the house cautiously, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Elizabeth. For a moment, time stood still. Elizabeth slowly rose to her feet, staring at Hannah as if she had just seen a ghost. It's you, she breathed. Hannah hesitated, glancing at Olivia for reassurance. Mom, Olivia said softly. This is Hannah. Elizabeth took a step forward, her eyes filled with wonder, pain, and love. My baby, she whispered again, this time directing the words at Hannah. Hannah's lips parted in shock. You're my mother? Elizabeth nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, and I'm so sorry. For a few agonizing moments, Hannah didn't move. She just stood there, absorbing everything. Then, with a choked sob, she rushed forward and collapsed into Elizabeth's embrace. It was a reunion neither of them had ever imagined possible. And yet it was real. The next step, after the initial shock settled, the three of them sat together, trying to piece everything together. Elizabeth told them everything she remembered about that night at the hospital: the confusion, the lies, the gut-wrenching pain of losing a child she had never been able to hold. She also revealed something else, something even more terrifying. I was warned, she confessed. After I kept asking questions about my baby, a man from the hospital came to see me. He told me to stop digging, or I'd lose everything. Olivia and Hannah exchanged a worried glance. That sounds exactly like what's happening to us now, Olivia murmured. Elizabeth looked at them, fear etched into her face. You need to be careful, she warned. Whoever did this, they don't want the truth coming out. Hannah clenched her fists. Then we make them regret it. Olivia nodded. We're not stopping. We're going to bring them down. Elizabeth hesitated, then nodded in agreement. Then I'm with you, she said. We do this together. For the first time in their lives, Olivia and Hannah had a mother who was truly fighting for them. And together, they were ready to face whatever came next. Hannah is also connected. A shocking discovery. Hannah sat frozen, staring at the document in front of her. Her hands trembled as she traced her fingers over the list of names under the New Horizons project files. And there it was, her mother's name. No, this can't be real, she whispered, her heart pounding. She glanced at Olivia, whose wide eyes mirrored her own disbelief. Why is my mom's name on this list? Elizabeth, still shaken from the reunion, took the USB from Hannah's hands and squinted at the text on the screen. Your mother, she murmured, her voice breaking. Oh my God, the realization hit them all at once. Olivia and Hannah weren't just two girls caught in a twisted experiment. They were sisters, a connection they never knew existed. For years, Olivia and Hannah had sensed something inexplicable between them. They had always felt drawn to each other in ways they couldn't explain. Even before they suspected anything, even before the DNA test, there was an unspoken familiarity, a feeling of being incomplete, like something was missing. Now, staring at the undeniable proof, everything made sense. Hannah clutched her stomach as nausea rolled over her. I have a twin, she whispered, and I never knew. Elizabeth covered her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. I never knew either, she said, her voice cracking. They took you away from me. Hannah's hands balled into fists. And my parents, she asked, did they know? Were they part of this? The thought made her stomach churn. The people she had trusted, the people she had called mom and dad for 16 years had been involved in something sinister. Had they known all along? Had they chosen to keep the truth from her? Digging deeper into the truth, Hannah and Olivia scoured through the documents on the USB, desperate for more answers. There were files detailing experiments, genetic modifications, and most horrifying of all, systematic baby exchanges. New Horizons had been swapping infants for years, experimenting on their genetics before placing them into suitable homes. Hannah's mind raced. This means we weren't the only ones. Olivia nodded. There could be dozens, maybe even hundreds of kids like us out there. Switched, modified, raised in the dark. A cold dread settled over them. How many other families have been ripped apart? And more importantly, why? A betrayal that runs deep. Hannah stood up abruptly. I need to talk to them, she muttered. Olivia's eyes widened. Who? Hannah clenched her jaw. My parents. I need to know if they were involved in this. Elizabeth reached for her hand. Sweetheart, are you sure that's a good idea? If they were part of this, they might not be honest with you. Hannah pulled away. I don't care. I have to hear it from them. She grabbed her coat and stormed toward the door, her mind a whirlwind of anger and confusion. Were they her real parents? Had they bought her, just like Olivia's parents had done? Had they ever truly loved her? Confronting the past, Hannah arrived at her childhood home, her heart pounding in her chest. The moment she stepped inside, she saw her parents sitting on the couch. Her mother, Claire, looked up in surprise. Hannah, what's wrong? Hannah tightened her fists. Were you ever going to tell me? Her father, Richard, furrowed his brow. Tell you what, Hannah threw the USB drive onto the coffee table. That I was part of an experiment. That I was taken from my real family. A heavy silence filled the room. Her mother paled. Where did you get this? It doesn't matter, Hannah shot back. Did you know? Her father sighed, rubbing his temples. Hannah, it's complicated. Don't lie to me, she screamed, tears spilling over. Did you know I wasn't your real daughter? Claire's lips quivered. We couldn't have children, she whispered. We wanted a baby so badly. New Horizons promised us a perfect child. They told us you had been an orphan. Hannah's breath hitched. So you just took me? Her father's face darkened. We gave you a life, Hannah. A life you never would have had otherwise. Hannah's stomach twisted. You stole me. Claire shook her head. We didn't know the full truth. We didn't know you had a twin. Hannah backed away. I don't even know who you are anymore. A line is crossed. As she turned to leave, her father's voice stopped her. You can't tell anyone about this. Hannah froze. She turned slowly. What? Richard's expression was cold, calculating. If you go to the authorities, if you expose New Horizons, you'll destroy everything, including yourself. A chill ran down Hannah's spine. They weren't just victims of New Horizons. They were complicit. She felt like she was going to be sick. Stay away from us, she whispered before running out the door. The aftermath. Hannah arrived back at Olivia's house, her hands shaking. Olivia and Elizabeth rushed to her side. What happened? Olivia asked. Hannah took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. They knew. They always knew. A silence stretched between them. Then, Olivia spoke. What do we do now? Hannah wiped her tears, her eyes burning with determination. We burn them down. Part 14. The heart-pounding escape, 1,000 words. 14.1. New Horizon Strikes Back. The night was quiet, too quiet. Olivia sat on the couch, scrolling through the latest findings on her phone. Next to her, Hannah flipped through the documents they had printed from the USB drive. Every new piece of information only deepened their horror. New Horizons had been operating for decades, manipulating genetics, switching babies, and covering up their crimes. A soft knock at the door made Olivia's head snap up. Her mother, sitting at the dining table, hesitated before rising to answer it. The moment she opened the door, she gasped. A tall man in a black suit stood there, his expression unreadable. His slick-back hair and polished shoes made him look like someone out of government agency. "Mrs. Reed," he said calmly. She tightened her grip on the doorknob. "Who are you?" The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm here to offer you some friendly advice." Olivia's mother swallowed hard. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Your daughter and her friend have been asking the wrong questions, digging where they shouldn't be. That's dangerous." Olivia stiffened. The man knew about them. Her mother's voice trembled. "If you're threatening my daughter—" "Oh, no threats." The man smiled again. "Just a warning. If she stops now, she and her little friend will be fine. But if she keeps going, well, let's just say accidents happen all the time." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. Hannah grabbed her wrist, whispering urgently, "We need to go. Now." Fleeing in the dead of night. Olivia and Hannah had no choice. They couldn't stay. If New Horizons knew where they were, it was only a matter of time before something worse happened. Grabbing only the essentials: cash, a change of clothes, and their documents, they hurried to Olivia's car. Her mother was in shock, still frozen by the door. "Where will you go?" she asked. Olivia hesitated. "Somewhere safe." Her mother nodded. "Be careful." As they backed out of the driveway, Hannah stole one last glance at the house, at the only home she had ever known. Would they ever be able to return? The road to nowhere. They drove for hours, far from town, taking back roads to avoid being tracked. Olivia kept glancing in the rearview mirror, her heart racing. "Do you think they're following us?" Hannah exhaled sharply. "I don't know, but I'm not taking any chances." Their only hope was to find someone who could help someone with power. That's when Olivia remembered. Laura Hayes, a journalist, a relentless investigator. If anyone could expose New Horizons, it was her. Olivia gripped the steering wheel. "We need to find her, hiding in a safe place." A desperate escape. The neon sign flickered above the motel entrance, casting a dim, eerie glow across the cracked pavement. The parking lot was half empty, save for a few battered cars. It was the kind of place where people stayed when they wanted to disappear. Olivia gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. Hannah sat in the passenger seat, glancing over her shoulder every few seconds, paranoia creeping into every movement. "Are you sure we lost them?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hannah swallowed hard. "I think so, but I can't shake the feeling that someone's still watching us." The black SUV that had followed them out of town had vanished after a few turns, but something about the whole chase felt off. They didn't have much time. Without another word, Olivia pulled into a parking space near the edge of the lot, as far from the motel's entrance as possible. The fewer people who saw them, the better. Checking in under the radar. They walked into the motel lobby, keeping their heads low. The front desk clerk, a tired-looking man with deep bags under his eyes, barely glanced up from his newspaper. "Room," he grunted. Olivia forced a smile, sliding a crumpled 20 across the counter. "One night. Cash." The man nodded, handing over an old-fashioned key attached to a plastic tag. "Room 207. Stairs are outside. No smoking, no parties. No questions." That was exactly what they needed. Hannah grabbed the key, and they hurried toward the stairwell, keeping to the shadows. Once inside their room, Olivia locked the door and slid the safety chain into place. Hannah pulled the curtains shut, peeking through a small gap to scan the parking lot. "I don't see anything," she murmured. "But that doesn't mean we're safe." The feeling of being watched. The motel room smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener. The single lamp on the nightstand flickered slightly, casting long shadows on the walls. Hannah paced near the window. Olivia sat on the bed, her mind racing. Who was following them? How much did New Horizons know? Then her phone buzzed. A text. Her stomach clenched as she saw the number. Unknown. "Nice try, girls. You can't run forever." Olivia's blood turned to ice. She turned the screen toward Hannah, who immediately paled. "They found us." Hannah's voice was barely a whisper, but the fear in it was deafening. How? They had paid in cash. They had taken back roads. They had made sure they weren't followed. Unless... Hannah's eyes darted to their phones. What if they're tracking us? Olivia didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone, yanked the battery out, and tossed it onto the bed. Hannah did the same. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. But their problems were far from over. A last hope, reaching out to Laura Hayes. They needed help. Someone who could go up against New Horizons. Someone with power. Olivia took a deep breath, then pulled out an old flip phone, one she had bought for emergencies. She punched in a number she had memorized hours earlier. Laura Hayes, an investigative journalist, known for exposing corporate corruption and government scandals. If anyone could help, it was her. She hesitated for only a second before hitting send. The line rang. Once. Twice. Click. Who is this? The voice on the other end was sharp, wary. Ms. Hayes, Olivia said quickly, keeping her voice low. My name is Olivia Reed. My friend and I were in danger. We need your help. A pause. Then slow down. What kind of danger? Olivia took a shaky breath. New Horizons. The genetic program. We have proof. And they're after us. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Laura exhaled sharply. Where are you? A motel outside of town. You're not safe. You need to leave now. Olivia's stomach twisted. What? What? If they know you're onto them, they won't stop until you're silenced. If you stay put, you won't make it till morning. A chill ran through Olivia's body. They were out of time. Connecting with the journalist. Meeting investigative journalist Laura Hayes. The night air was thick with tension as Olivia and Hannah sat huddled in their rental car, waiting. The deserted parking lot outside a small, all-night diner was dimly lit by flickering streetlights. Their paranoia had only grown after speaking with Laura Hayes, the investigative journalist they had contacted in a last-ditch attempt to expose New Horizons. Hannah tapped her fingers anxiously against her knee. What if this is a trap? She whispered, glancing at Olivia. What if New Horizons found out we called her? Olivia clenched her jaw. She's our best shot. We have to trust someone, and she's the only person with enough power to help us. The minutes felt like hours, but finally a car pulled up. A woman in her late 40s stepped out. Her sharp, observant eyes scanned the lot before she walked briskly toward them. Laura Hayes. She was exactly what they expected, wiry, no nonsense, dressed in practical black jeans and a leather jacket. She exuded the energy of someone who had seen too much of the world's dark underbelly. She slid into the back seat of their car without a word, shutting the door quietly behind her. For a moment, she just studied them. Then she spoke. Tell me everything. The weight of truth. Olivia and Hannah took turns recounting the events of the past weeks. The DNA test, the strange inconsistencies in their birth records, the threats, the black SUV that followed them, the USB with encrypted files, and finally finding their real mother. Laura listened intently, nodding occasionally but not interrupting. When they finished, she let out a long breath and leaned back against the seat. This is bigger than I thought. Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. I've covered corrupt corporations, government conspiracies, even human trafficking rings, but New Horizons, this is on another level. Hannah swallowed hard. So what do we do? How do we stop them? Laura turned to face them fully, her expression serious. We need proof. Real, undeniable proof that will force the world to listen. Olivia hesitated before pulling the USB drive from her jacket pocket. We found this in Dr. Reynolds' old office. It has files on New Horizons, but we haven't been able to access them yet. Laura took the USB, turning it between her fingers. I know a hacker who might be able to crack it, but it won't be safe to stay here. If they've tracked you this far, it's only a matter of time before they show up. Hannah tensed. So, where do we go? Laura's expression darkened. Somewhere they won't expect. A dangerous offer. Laura drove them out of the city, taking back roads to avoid surveillance. She had insisted on switching cars, ditching their rental at a gas station before leading them to an old, beat-up sedan parked in an alley. As the city lights faded in the rearview mirror, Olivia felt a strange mix of fear and relief. They weren't alone anymore. But were they any safer? They arrived at a small cabin deep in the woods, hidden from prying eyes. Laura parked the car and turned to them. I need you two to understand something. Her voice was low, serious. You're not dealing with just another corrupt company. New Horizons has connections. They have money, power, and resources you can't even begin to imagine. She exhaled sharply. If you keep pushing, you might never see the sunlight again. Hannah paled. Are you saying we should stop? Laura's eyes hardened. I'm saying you need to be willing to risk everything if you want the truth to come out. Silence settled over them. Olivia squared her shoulders. They stole our lives. If we don't expose them, they'll keep doing it to others. We have to stop them. Hannah nodded. We're in. Laura studied them for a long moment before nodding. Then we'd better move fast. She pulled out her phone and sent a message to someone, then looked back at them. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start digging. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. The battle had only just begun. 15.2. Unmasking the Mastermind, 1,000 words. The revelation of Nathaniel Cross. The dim glow of Laura Hayes' laptop cast eerie shadows on the cabin's walls as she scrolled through classified documents. Olivia and Hannah sat close, their eyes glued to the screen. The tension in the room was palpable as Laura's fingers danced over the keyboard, unlocking files that had been buried for years. A name appeared on the screen. Nathaniel Cross. The air seemed to thicken as they took in the information before them. Cross wasn't just a wealthy investor. He was the key figure behind New Horizons. Who is he? Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Laura didn't look away from the screen. Nathaniel Cross is more than just a billionaire. He's a scientist, an entrepreneur, and a puppeteer pulling strings from behind the scenes. He has influence in the pharmaceutical industry, biotech firms, and even government agencies. Hannah frowned. But why would someone like him care about a secret experiment from over a decade ago? Laura turned to face them. Because it wasn't just an experiment. It was a project designed to shape the future of human genetics. And he doesn't want anyone exposing it. Digging into Cross's past. They spent the next few hours combing through files, articles, and financial records. Cross had managed to keep a low profile in mainstream media, but the deeper they dug, the clearer the picture became. He wasn't just funding New Horizons. He was running it. Olivia scrolled through documents, her breath catching in her throat. Look at this. She pointed to a report from over a decade ago. He personally oversaw the genetic engineering division, and he pushed for human trials. Hannah's face paled. You mean he was the one who approved our switch? Laura nodded grimly. If you were part of a controlled trial, Cross would have known everything. Your DNA, your placement in different families, everything. A shiver ran down Olivia's spine. She and Hannah weren't just victims. They were subjects. Laura's plan. After hours of research, Laura leaned back and rubbed her temples. We can't just expose Cross with speculation. We need undeniable proof. Olivia crossed her arms. What kind of proof? Laura looked them both in the eyes. A confession, or direct evidence linking him to the program. Hannah frowned. How do we get that? He's one of the most powerful men in the country. Laura smirked. That's where things get interesting. She turned the laptop around and pulled up a high-end gala invitation. Nathaniel Cross was scheduled to appear at a private biotech summit in 3 days. We need to get close to him. The danger of exposure. Are you crazy? Olivia stared at Laura in disbelief. You want us to break into a high-security event and confront one of the most dangerous men in the world? Laura remained unfazed. It's our best shot. We'll have press credentials. We get in, plant a recording device, and catch him admitting to his crimes. Hannah shifted uncomfortably. And if he doesn't admit anything? Laura's expression darkened. Then we dig deeper until he does. A lump formed in Olivia's throat. She had already risked so much to get this far, but going after a man like Cross, this was different. This wasn't just about uncovering a secret. This was war. The final decision. Silence settled over the room. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on them. Hannah was the first to speak. If we don't do this, he'll keep getting away with it. More kids will be experimented on. More lives will be stolen. Olivia clenched her fists. He took everything from us. If we don't stop him now, no one will. Laura nodded. Then it's settled. We infiltrate the summit. The night outside was silent, but inside, their world was about to change forever. The race against time, planning to expose the evidence. The tension in the room was thick as Laura Hayes, Olivia, and Hannah huddled around a dimly lit table. The weight of their discovery pressed down on them. They were sitting on a truth that could shatter the power of Nathaniel Cross and bring down new horizons. But with that truth came immense danger. We can't just throw this out into the world blindly, Laura said, her voice steady but urgent. Cross has more resources than we can imagine. If we don't do this right, he'll erase everything before it even reaches the public. Olivia swallowed hard. So what do we do? Laura leaned forward, tapping on her laptop. We make sure the evidence is safe before we release it. That means multiple backups, secure transmissions, and making sure this doesn't just disappear into thin air. Hannah frowned. But where do we store it? We can't just save it on a USB and hope for the best. Laura smirked. That's where things get interesting. She turned her screen toward them, revealing a list of encrypted cloud storage services. We're going to upload copies of everything to multiple secure servers. These aren't your everyday Google Drives. These are independent, decentralized networks that even Cross's people won't be able to wipe out easily. Olivia let out a breath. That's smart. And we're not stopping there, Laura continued. We're also going to send out pieces of the information to multiple trusted journalists. If Cross moves against one, the others will still have access to the truth. Hannah nodded. So even if something happens to us, the story gets out. Laura's expression turned grim. Exactly. Beating Cross before he can strike. Time was against them. Cross wasn't stupid. He would know they had the evidence soon, if he didn't already. And once he did, he would do everything in his power to silence them. They worked through the night, encrypting files, creating contingency plans, and drafting messages to investigative journalists who might be willing to take on Cross's empire. At one point, Olivia sat back, rubbing her tired eyes. What if no one listens? Laura looked at her sharply. That's not an option. But Olivia couldn't shake the doubt. We're just two girls who got caught in something bigger than us. Cross has influence, money, connections. People like him don't get taken down easily. Laura's gaze softened slightly. No, they don't. But they're not untouchable. The key is to act fast and hit hard. If we go public all at once, Cross can't suppress everything. The more eyes we get on this, the less control he has. Hannah exhaled. Then we have to be fast. Before he realizes what we're doing. Laura nodded. That's the plan. We go wide, we go loud, and we go now. The first move. With everything in place, Laura pulled up a list of high-profile journalists and whistleblower platforms. We're sending this to 5 major news outlets and 2 independent investigators, she said. Some of these people have taken down governments. If they pick this up, Cross won't be able to stop it. Olivia hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Once we do this, there's no going back. Laura gave her a firm nod. That's right. Are you ready? A beat of silence. Then, Olivia took a deep breath and hit send. One by one, encrypted emails shot out into the digital ether, carrying the truth with them. A sudden threat. No more than 20 minutes after the emails were sent, Laura's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her expression turned ice cold. They know. Hannah's stomach twisted. What? Laura turned her laptop toward them. The server where they had uploaded one of their backup files was under attack. Someone was trying to erase their evidence in real time. Cross's people must have picked up on our activity, Laura said, fingers flying over the keyboard. They're trying to shut us down before this spreads. Olivia's breath hitched. Can they do that? Laura clenched her jaw. Not all of it. But if they find out where our other files are stored, they'll try to wipe those too. Hannah's mind raced. What do? Laura's eyes darkened. We make our move faster. The longer we wait, the more time they have to bury this. One last backup plan. Laura grabbed a burner phone and quickly dialed a number. Mark, it's me. I need you to push something out fast. A gruff voice responded on the other end. How bad is it? Bad enough that we're running out of time. Mark was one of Laura's contacts, a former intelligence analyst who had gone rogue after uncovering government corruption. He had the ability to release sensitive information to the public in a way that no one could trace back to them. Uploading now, Laura said, tapping furiously at her screen. Mark, once this is out, we'll be on every watch list in the country. A low chuckle came from the phone. Then let's make sure it's worth it. With one final keystroke, Laura sent the entire case file to Mark's network. It was done. A moment of silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of what they had just done settled over them. Olivia let out a shaky breath. Do you think it will be enough? Laura closed her laptop and exhaled. We'll find out soon enough. Hannah looked toward the window, her heart hammering in her chest. Out in the darkness, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was already watching. A mysterious break-in. A sinister break-in. The moment Olivia, Hannah, and Laura stepped into their hotel room, an icy chill ran down their spines. The door was slightly ajar. Laura instantly held out an arm, stopping the girls from entering further. Something's wrong, she whispered. Hannah's pulse pounded in her ears. What if someone is still in there? Laura cautiously pushed the door open, revealing a scene of absolute chaos. The entire room had been ransacked. Clothes were strewn across the floor, drawers were left hanging open, and their suitcases had been upended. But the most alarming sight was Laura's laptop, its screen black, its hard drive wiped clean. Olivia gasped. They got in. Laura clenched her jaw. Not just got in. They wiped everything. She rushed to the desk, where her laptop sat motionless. All of their research, their encrypted files, their backups gone. Hannah's voice trembled. Do you think they tracked us? Laura shook her head, frustration flashing in her eyes. Not possible. I use encrypted channels. This wasn't a simple hack, this was an inside job. Olivia hesitated before speaking. What if one of the journalists we sent the files to was compromised? Laura exhaled sharply. It's possible. Cross has powerful connections, someone could have tipped him off. But then, Hannah's gaze landed on something even more chilling. A single piece of folded paper lay neatly on the bed. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. When she unfolded the note, 3 words were scrawled in jagged handwriting. Stop now, or else. The weight of the threat. A shiver ran down Olivia's spine. This wasn't just a warning. This was a promise. Laura snatched the note from Hannah's hands and read it, her lips pressing into a tight line. They're watching us. Hannah's voice was barely above a whisper. What do we do now? Laura took a steady breath. We need to leave. Now. She grabbed her bag, her movements quick and methodical. We can't stay here. They've already breached our space. We don't know if they installed cameras, trackers, or bugs. We need to move before they come back. But Olivia wasn't ready to leave. She clenched her fists. They're trying to scare us into stopping. That means we're close to the truth, doesn't it? Laura turned to face her, eyes burning with intensity. Close to the truth won't mean anything if we're dead, Olivia. A desperate escape. They gathered their things quickly, trying not to leave any trace behind. Laura wiped down their belongings, clearing fingerprints off surfaces as best as she could. Just as they were about to leave, a faint sound echoed from the hallway. Footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. Someone was coming. Laura motioned for them to stay quiet. She reached for her phone and typed quickly. Get to the stairwell. Now. Olivia and Hannah exchanged glances before slipping toward the emergency exit. Their hearts pounded as they quietly pushed open the stairwell door. The footsteps grew louder. Laura took one last glance at the room before following them in. Just as she shut the door behind her, the hallway door creaked open. A shadow loomed in the doorway. Someone was inside the room. But the 3 of them were already moving, descending the stairwell 2 steps at a time, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Nowhere left to hide. They didn't stop until they reached the hotel's back entrance. Laura scanned the area quickly. We need a new safe house. Somewhere off the grid. Hannah was still catching her breath. But where? They found us here so fast. Laura clenched her jaw. I have a place. An old contact of mine. It's remote, untraceable. It'll give us time to regroup. Olivia hesitated. And what about the files? All of our evidence is gone. Laura's expression darkened. Not all of it. She pulled a tiny, nearly invisible USB drive from the inside of her jacket. This is a backup of everything. I never keep all my eggs in one basket. Relief flooded through Olivia and Hannah. They hadn't lost everything. But as Laura stared at the small device in her hand, she knew one thing for certain. Cross wouldn't stop until he had this, too. They had just become the most wanted people in his game. And this time, there might be no way out. Tracking Cross. Arriving at the secret data center, Laura sat at the wheel, gripping the steering tightly as the car sped down the deserted highway. The air was thick with tension. New Horizons had wiped their tracks before, but now they had a lead. Laura's years of investigative journalism had given her a nose for hidden truths. Through a combination of leaked documents, old financial records, and insider tips, she had uncovered something crucial. New Horizons had a secure data facility on the outskirts of town. "This is it," Laura murmured, slowing the car as they approached a heavily gated industrial complex. The place looked like a normal warehouse: tall fences, security cameras, and a bland sign that read, "Horizon Tech Storage and Logistics." But Laura knew better. Behind those walls was the evidence they needed to expose Cross and everything he had done. Olivia and Hannah exchanged nervous glances. "Are we really doing this?" Olivia whispered. "We don't have a choice," Laura replied. "This might be the only place left where we can find unedited files, actual proof of what they've been doing for years. Disguising as IT workers. Breaking into a high-security facility wasn't something they could do recklessly. They needed a plan. Laura had a few tricks up her sleeve. After some digging, she had discovered that the facility's IT maintenance was outsourced to a private contractor. Using fake credentials and a forged work order, they had a cover story. They were IT technicians sent to fix a system error in the security database. Hannah adjusted her oversized uniform, fidgeting with the ID badge clipped to her collar. It looked real, but would it be enough? "Remember," Laura said, "act like you belong. Security guards are trained to look for hesitation. If they stop us, we're just here for routine maintenance." "Got it," Olivia nodded. Her heart was racing, but she knew they had to keep their cool. They approached the main gate. A guard stepped out, his eyes narrowing as he scanned them. "State your business," he said, crossing his arms. Laura didn't flinch. She pulled out a clipboard and sighed, sounding exasperated. "Routine check. You guys called about a network failure in the internal system. We're here to fix it before your security logs get corrupted." The guard raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't told about this." "Typical," Laura muttered, shaking her head. "They always forget to pass it down to security. Look, you can call your supervisor, but we charge extra for after-hours service. You really want to explain to your boss why you delayed a priority fix?" The guard hesitated. He was weighing his options. Finally, he sighed. "Fine. You have 30 minutes. Don't touch anything you're not supposed to." They were inside the data facility. The facility was larger than they had expected. Rows of server racks hummed softly, filling the room with an eerie blue glow. The air smelled sterile, like metal and cold electronics. Laura glanced at Olivia and Hannah. "Stick to the plan. We need to find the main terminal." They moved quickly, trying not to draw attention. Employees in white lab coats walked by, engrossed in their tasks. No one questioned their presence yet. Hannah spotted a secure door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." "That has to be it," she whispered. Laura nodded. "Olivia, you're up." Olivia had spent weeks learning how to bypass basic security systems. She pulled out a cloned keycard, one she had lifted from a contractor database earlier. She swiped it. Beep. The door clicked open, accessing the files. Inside was a small, windowless room filled with high-tech servers. Laura sat at a terminal and plugged in a small flash drive. "Okay, let's see what they're hiding." As the data downloaded, Olivia and Hannah scanned the file names, each one more damning than the last. Subject X 205, DNA Alteration Study. Infant Exchange Protocol. Board members confidential. Nathaniel Cross authorization. Olivia's breath caught. This is it. This is the proof. But suddenly, a warning flashed across the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Security alert triggered. Hannah's eyes widened. "Laura, we need to move. Now." Laura yanked the flash drive out and stuffed it into her pocket. Then, the facility's alarm blared through the halls. A desperate escape. "Time's up," Laura hissed. They sprinted toward the exit, but the guard were already mobilizing. "Freeze!" a voice bellowed. Laura shoved Olivia and Hannah down a side corridor. "We can't go out the front." They raced through the maze of corridors, searching for another way out. Then, Hannah spotted a ventilation shaft. "It's too small," Olivia panted. "It's either that or getting caught," Laura snapped. One by one, they squeezed into the narrow passage. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed behind them. Just as Olivia pulled the grate shut, a guard stormed into the hallway. But they were already gone, escaping into the night. They crawled through the ventilation system, the metal cold against their hands. Finally, they reached an exit vent that opened into an alleyway. One last push, and they tumbled onto the pavement, gasping for breath. Laura glanced back. "We have what we came for. Now we take Cross down." Olivia gripped the flash drive tightly. But in the pit of her stomach, she knew Cross wasn't going to let them go that easily. Shocking evidence. The explosive revelation. Laura's fingers trembled as she flipped through the dusty folders inside the old filing cabinet. They had found something bigger than they had ever imagined. Hannah pulled out a thick, yellow document labeled Project Next Generation, Confidential. Her heart pounded as she skimmed through the contents. The words on the page sent a chill down her spine. Agreement between New Horizons and the United States Department of Genetic Development. "This isn't just about swapping babies," Olivia whispered, scanning another page. "They were conducting illegal genetic experiments on hundreds of children." The horrifying truth. The documents detailed an extensive government-backed operation that spanned over 2 decades. New Horizons wasn't just an independent research group. They had powerful backers, people in high places who had allowed them to experiment on human DNA under the guise of scientific progress. Key revelations included the intentional swapping of newborns as part of a secret study on nature versus nurture, experiments aimed at modifying genes to enhance intelligence, physical abilities, and disease resistance. Evidence that some subjects had suffered severe complications, including unexplained disappearances. Hannah's voice was barely above a whisper. How many kids were involved?" Laura's face was pale as she turned to a list of test subjects. Her stomach twisted. Hundreds of names. Some were crossed out. Cross's personal involvement. The next set of papers made Olivia's blood run cold. Nathaniel Cross, the billionaire behind New Horizons, had been personally overseeing certain experiments. The report included handwritten notes, some signed with his initials. Subject X, 205, shows promising cognitive enhancements, but physical instability remains an issue. Further genetic recalibration required. Extreme measures necessary to maintain secrecy. No loose ends. Olivia clenched her fists. This man played God. He destroyed families, experimented on innocent children, and covered up every trace. Laura took a shaky breath. "If we can get these documents out, we can destroy him." Copying the evidence. They worked quickly. Laura plugged in her external drive and began transferring the files. The minutes stretched painfully. Every second felt like an eternity. Hannah's eyes darted around the room. Something felt wrong. Then, a red warning flashed across the screen. "Unauthorized data transfer detected." They've been caught. An alarm screamed through the facility. Red lights flashed. Olivia's heart slammed against her ribs. "We have to move now." Laura yanked the drive free. "Got it." But outside the room, they heard the sound of approaching footsteps. A desperate escape. "Split up," Laura hissed. They sprinted down different hallways. Guards shouted behind them. Heavy boots thundered down the corridors. Hannah turned a corner and nearly collided with a security officer. He reached for his radio. She didn't think. She just acted. Grabbing a fire extinguisher off the wall, she slammed it into his shoulder. He groaned, stumbling backward. She ran. The rooftop exit. Olivia spotted an emergency staircase. "This way," she shouted. They burst onto the rooftop. The city lights stretched out before them, but below, guards were swarming the exits. "We're trapped," Hannah gasped. Laura's eyes darted to an adjacent rooftop several feet away. "We jump," she said. Olivia's stomach flipped. It was too far, too dangerous. But the sound of boots pounding up the stairwell made the decision for them. They ran. They jumped. Hannah's feet barely caught the ledge. She scrambled forward, heart racing. Laura and Olivia landed hard beside her. Behind them, gunfire rang out. Bullets slammed into the rooftop. They kept running. A new target. They didn't stop until they reached an abandoned warehouse. They were shaking, exhausted, but they had done it. Laura held up the flash drive. "We have everything we need." Olivia exhaled. "Then let's burn Cross to the ground." Betrayal. A familiar face reveals his true identity. The air was thick with tension as Olivia, Hannah, and Laura sprinted through the empty streets, their lungs burning from the escape. Behind them, the sirens of the security team from New Horizons still echoed in the distance. They turned a corner and froze. A black SUV skidded to a stop in front of them, cutting off their path. The doors opened. Reed stepped out. The same man who had once helped them navigate through New Horizons' complex web of secrets. But now he looked different. Gone was the casual, helpful demeanor. Instead, his sharp gaze held something unreadable. Hannah's fingers clenched into fists. You set us up?" Reed sighed, looking almost regretful. "Not exactly." The truth about Reed. Laura took a step forward, blocking Olivia and Hannah. "What do you want?" Reed lifted his hands, as if to show he wasn't armed. "Look, I know how this looks, but you need to understand I was never fully honest with you." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "So you were working for Cross all along?" A shadow crossed Reed's face. "At first, yes." Silence. Hannah's heart pounded. They had trusted him. He continued, voice low and urgent. "My job was to monitor you, to make sure you didn't dig too deep. But once I found out what Cross was really doing, I couldn't be part of it anymore." "So what now?" Olivia demanded. Reed hesitated for just a moment before saying, "Now, you have a choice." He exhaled sharply, looking around as if expecting someone to be watching. "Cross won't stop until he erases every trace of this story. That means you. If you want to survive, you have to let me handle this." Hannah shook her head. "Handle it how?" Reed's jaw tightened. "Leave it to me to take Cross down. You disappear. Stop digging." A risky proposition. Laura folded her arms. "And why should we trust you?" Reed met her gaze, serious and unwavering. "Because if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't be here talking to you." Silence stretched between them. The distant sound of approaching sirens sent a chill through Olivia's spine. They had no time. Reed was right about one thing: Cross wouldn't stop until they were silenced. But could they trust him? Olivia's dilemma. Hannah turned to Olivia, her expression uncertain. "Do we take his offer?" Olivia bit her lip, her mind racing. Reed had resources, connections. He knew how Cross operated. But at the same time, he had lied before. Could they afford to put their fate in his hands? Finally, Olivia took a deep breath. "Tell us your plan first." Reed's plan. Reed glanced over his shoulder before lowering his voice. "Cross has a kill switch, a failsafe. If he thinks the story is about to break, he'll activate it." Hannah frowned. "What kind of failsafe?" Reed's face darkened. "He'll wipe out every piece of evidence. And every person who knows too much." Laura muttered a curse. Olivia's stomach twisted. They weren't just exposing corruption. They were in a game of survival. "So what do we do?" Reed's expression was grim. "We find his fail-safe first, and we take him down before he takes us down." A dangerous gamble. Laura shook her head. "That's easier said than done. Cross has more power and money than we could ever imagine." Reed gave a humorless laugh. "You think I don't know that? That's why we need to be smart." He turned to Olivia and Hannah. "If you stay on your current path, you won't make it out alive. But if we get to Cross's fail-safe first, we can end this on our terms." Hannah exhaled shakily. This was bigger than they had anticipated. Olivia clenched her jaw. She didn't come this far just to back down now. The final choice. Reed looked between them. "You have a choice. Run and disappear, forever leaving Cross to continue his twisted experiments. Or fight back but risk everything." Laura crossed her arms. "What if we say no?" Reed's expression was unreadable. "Then I'll wish you the best of luck. But you won't last long." Hannah glanced at Olivia. She already knew what her friend was thinking. They weren't running. Olivia lifted her chin. Tell us where to start. Reed exhaled, nodding. All right then. Let's bring this bastard down. Who can they trust? A moment of doubt. The night air was thick with tension as Olivia, Hannah, and Laura exchanged uneasy glances. Reed stood in front of them, waiting for their answer. We don't have much time, he said, his voice urgent. You need to decide now. But how could they? Laura, arms crossed, was the first to speak. We can't trust him. Olivia hesitated. He could be telling the truth. Laura scoffed. Or he could be leading us straight to Cross. Reed had worked for Cross before. How could they be sure he wasn't still playing both sides? Hannah shook her head, voice uncertain. If we trust the wrong person, we might not live to regret it. The sound of engines. Before they could argue further, a new sound shattered the night engines. Not just one, but multiple engines roaring in the distance. Laura's eyes widened. They found us. Reed spun around, his face darkening. Damn it. No more time. You either come with me now, or you're on your own. A choice. One they weren't ready to make. But the decision was made for them. No choice but to run. Headlights flared to life at the far end of the street. A convoy of black SUVs surged forward, their tires screeching. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. They weren't coming to talk. Hannah grabbed her arm. Olivia, we have to go. Reed took a step forward. Get in my car. Now. Laura's jaw clenched. Hell no. We're not getting into a car with him. But the SUVs were closing in fast. Olivia turned to Hannah. We have no choice. Laura cursed. Damn it. Fine. But if he screws us over, I'll kill him myself. A desperate escape. They ran toward Reed's car. A black sedan parked a few feet away, half hidden in the shadows. Reed yanked the doors open. Get in now. They piled into the vehicle. As soon as the doors shut, Reed slammed on the gas. The tires screeched against the pavement as the sedan shot forward, barely avoiding the oncoming SUVs. Gunshots rang out behind them. Glass shattered. Hannah ducked, heart hammering. They're shooting at us? Reed cursed under his breath. Buckle up. This is going to be rough. The chase. The SUVs gave chase, their engines roaring like beasts hunting prey. Reed swerved sharply around a corner, trying to lose them. But Cross's men were trained. They kept up, closing in. Laura twisted in her seat. We need to lose them now. Reed gritted his teeth. Working on it. Roadblock ahead. As they sped through the dark streets, Olivia's eyes widened. Up ahead, two more SUVs blocked the road. A trap. Reed's face remained calm, but calculating. Hold on to something. Olivia barely had time to react before Reed yanked the wheel to the left. The sedan skidded onto a narrow side street, its tires barely gripping the asphalt. The car fishtailed but held steady. The SUVs behind them weren't as lucky. One clipped the corner and crashed into a street pole. The other tried to follow, but lost control, spinning out. Hannah exhaled. That bought us time. Hunted. But they weren't safe yet. The remaining SUVs were still hot on their trail. Reed's hands tightened around the steering wheel. We need a safe house. Laura snorted. You mean a place where Cross can trap us more easily? Reed's jaw clenched. We don't have a choice. Olivia swallowed hard. Trusting Reed felt like playing Russian roulette. But staying on the streets meant certain death. Finally, Laura sighed. Fine. But if this is a setup, I'll put a bullet in your head myself. Reed smirked. Fair enough. Nowhere left to hide. 15 minutes later, they arrived at a rundown warehouse on the edge of town. It looked abandoned. Reed pulled into the garage and killed the engine. Silence fell over them. Hannah looked at Olivia. What now? Reed turned to face them. Now, we find Cross before he finds us. Laura sighed, rubbing her temples. Great. Another suicide mission. But Olivia knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Chase in the night. A heart-pounding pursuit. The cold night air was thick with tension. Footsteps echoed through the desolate warehouse as Olivia, Hannah, Laura, and Reed sprinted inside, their hearts hammering against their ribs. Behind them, the distant roar of engines and sharp orders from men searching for them rang through the night. Move! They're right behind us. Reed hissed, leading the way deeper into the abandoned building. The warehouse was vast rusted machinery, forgotten crates, and cracked concrete floors stretched endlessly in the dim moonlight. Hannah clutched Olivia's arm, eyes wide with fear. "We're trapped, aren't we?" Laura, her breath coming in quick bursts, shook her head. "Not yet. We just need an exit." "An exit? But where?" Cross's men close in. Outside, Cross's men fanned out, scanning the area with flashlights and weapons drawn. Their voices carried through the empty night. "They have to be here somewhere. Check every corner. Don't let them get away." A shiver ran down Olivia's spine. They had seconds before they were found. Reed grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the ground and motioned for the others to follow him toward the back of the warehouse. "Stay low. Keep quiet." They weaved through the shadows, pressing themselves against the cold steel walls. Hannah whispered, "There's no way out." Laura's eyes darted around until she spotted a rusted grate near the floor, a sewer entrance. She pointed. "That's our way out." But it was sealed shut with heavy bolts. A desperate attempt. Reed yanked at the grate. It didn't budge. Footsteps grew louder. They were running out of time. Olivia clenched her fists. "We need something to break it open." Reed handed her the metal pipe. "Then start hitting." With every ounce of strength, Olivia slammed the pipe against the bolts. Clang, clang. The sound echoed through the warehouse. Laura's face paled. "They'll hear us." Olivia gritted her teeth. "They'll hear us either way if we don't get out." The bolts groaned but didn't give. More footsteps. A beam of light flashed against the walls. They'd been spotted. Gunfire and chaos. There, in the back, a gunshot split the air as a bullet ricocheted off a steel column near Hannah. She let out a yelp, ducking down. Reed lunged forward, slamming his pipe against the nearest gunman's wrist, sending his weapon clattering to the ground. Another shot rang out. Laura tackled Hannah behind a pile of crates. "Keep your head down." Olivia swung again, finally breaking the last bolt. The grate lurched open. "Geo," she shouted. Laura shoved Hannah inside first, then climbed in after her. Reed grabbed Olivia's wrist, practically throwing her into the tunnel before jumping in himself. Just as another bullet whizzed past them. 19.2. The underground escape. The tunnel was damp, dark, and reeked of decay. The only light came from the grates above, faint moonlight filtering through. No time to think. They ran. Water splashed beneath their feet as they waded through the narrow passage. Hannah's breathing was ragged. Where does this even lead? Reed kept his pace steady. Anywhere but back there. The gunman above shouted in frustration. Then the grates rattled. They were trying to pry them open. Olivia's pulse spiked. "They're coming after us." Laura cursed under her breath. "We need to lose them." The maze of the underground. The tunnels twisted in every direction, a labyrinth of rusted pipes and old passageways. Reed took the lead, guiding them left, then right, then left again. Olivia's lungs burned. Her legs felt like lead. Hannah tripped on a loose stone, nearly face-planting into the shallow water. Laura yanked her back up. "Come on, kid. We can't stop now." Behind them, distant footsteps echoed. Cross's men had found the entrance. A glimmer of hope. Finally, the tunnel sloped upward. A rusted ladder led to another grate above. Reed climbed first, pushing against the metal. It didn't budge. Laura swore. "It's sealed shut." Hannah clenched her fists. "We can't go back." Olivia scanned their surroundings. Then she saw a side tunnel, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. But it wasn't a tunnel. It was an old maintenance shaft. "This way." Olivia pulled Hannah toward it. Reed hesitated. "Are you sure?" "No time." Into the unknown. They crawled into the cramped, narrow shaft. The metal walls pressed in on them as they moved in single file. Distant voices echoed through the tunnels. Cross's men had reached the ladder. Hannah whimpered. "They're too close." Reed whispered back, "Just keep moving." The shaft twisted again, then opened up into another underground level. They weren't out yet, but they had gained precious minutes. No turning back. Laura exhaled sharply. "We need to find a real way out before they catch up." Reed checked the map on his phone. "There's an exit about half a mile ahead." Olivia nodded. "Then let's move." Hannah swallowed hard. "And if they get there first?" Laura's eyes were cold. "Then we fight." The four of them locked eyes. No more running. No more hiding. It was time to end this. An unexpected counterattack. A mysterious destination. The air was thick with tension as Reed drove through the deserted industrial district, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Behind him, Olivia, Hannah, and Laura sat in silence, their minds racing with the weight of what had just happened. They had narrowly escaped Cross's men. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Hannah broke the silence. Where are we going? Reed's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Somewhere safe. Laura's voice was sharp. I don't like blind trust, Reed. You better start talking. Reed exhaled. There's someone who can help us. People who've been fighting against men like Cross for years. Olivia exchanged a glance with Hannah. And we can trust them? Reed hesitated. Let's just say, they hate Cross even more than we do. The car veered onto a secluded road, flanked by abandoned warehouses and dim streetlights. Reed pulled up to a graffiti-covered building, the paint chipping away from years of neglect. To anyone else, it was just another forgotten relic of the city. But to Reed, it was a fortress. The hacker's hideout. He knocked twice on a rusted metal door. Silence. Then the sound of gears shifting. A hidden scanner slid out from the wall, scanning Reed's face before retreating. The door groaned open. Inside, a dimly lit corridor led to a sprawling underground space, buzzing with energy. Computer screens flickered, casting eerie blue glows on the figures hunched over keyboards. Olivia's breath caught. She had never seen anything like it. Rows of server racks, stacks of encrypted hard drives, and giant monitors displaying endless streams of data. It was like stepping into a cyber war zone. Meeting the hackers. A man in a leather jacket stepped forward, arms crossed. Reed, you sure you want to bring outsiders in here? Reed smirked. Relax, Mason. These guys are on our side. Mason studied them, his sharp green eyes filled with suspicion. They better be, because what we're about to do, there's no going back. Olivia squared her shoulders. We don't want to go back. Mason nodded, motioning for them to follow him deeper into the lair. Then let's get to work. Decoding the data. Laura handed Mason the encrypted USB drive they had stolen from New Horizons data center. Mason whistled. You have no idea how many people would kill for this. Hannah shuddered. Oh, we have some idea. Mason's team, a small group of elite hackers, immediately got to work, their fingers flying across the keyboards. Lines of code scrolled rapidly. Firewalls were bypassed. Layers of encryption peeled away like old paint. Minutes passed. Then, Mason's eyes widened. Holy, this is bigger than we thought. He turned to the largest screen. A video file blinked at them. Its title? Confidential. Project New Horizons Government Meeting. The truth on camera. Mason clicked play. The screen flickered. A grainy video appeared a secret meeting in an extravagant boardroom. At the center of the frame sat Nathaniel Cross, his hands folded on the table, his face unreadable. Across from him were several government officials, their expressions tense. Cross leaned forward. You know as well as I do that this program is necessary. We are building a future beyond human limitations. One of the officials, an older man in a military uniform, frowned. You're altering DNA without consent. You're taking children from families. Cross's lips curled into a smug smile. And you're benefiting from it. He gestured to a folder on the table. Inside are the reports. Enhanced intelligence, heightened physical endurance, immunity to genetic diseases. Your own department has already seen the results. The official hesitated. What happens if this gets out? Cross's eyes darkened. It won't. The ultimate cover-up. The video continued. Another official, a woman with piercing blue eyes, spoke next. We need assurance, Cross. If the public finds out. Cross interrupted. I have already taken care of it. The media won't touch this. Law enforcement won't touch this. And those who try. He let out a low chuckle. Well, let's just say, accidents happen. A shiver ran down Olivia's spine. This wasn't just an experiment. It was a conspiracy at the highest level. And now they had proof. What happens next? The video ended. Silence filled the room. Laura clenched her fists. This is it. This is how we take him down. Hannah swallowed. If we release this, Cross would do everything to stop us. Reed nodded. which is why we need a plan. We can't just dump this online and hope for the best. Mason leaned back his chair, smirking. Then it's a good thing you came to us. He cracked his knuckles. Because if Cross thinks he's untouchable, he's about to have the worst day of his life. No turning back. Olivia met Hannah's gaze. They had come too far to stop now. Cross had stolen lives, torn families apart, silenced anyone who got in his way. But now, the world was about to hear the truth. And Cross, he wouldn't see it coming. Not this time. The world is warned. Releasing the truth to the public. A plan to expose Cross. Laura Hayes sat at the center of a dimly lit room, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she sent out urgent messages to the largest media outlets in America. CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC News. She attached the video evidence, the confidential meeting between Nathaniel Cross and top government officials. It was the kind of information that would shake the entire country. Olivia and Hannah sat beside her, their faces pale but determined. They had risked their lives to uncover this truth. Now, it was time to make sure everyone knew. Laura turned to them. This is going to be big. But once we do this, there's no going back. Olivia nodded. We don't want to go back. Hannah took a deep breath. We need to end this. Laura hit send. The emails shot out into the world. The storm had begun, reaching the journalists. Within minutes, Laura's phone exploded with notifications. A dozen journalists responded. Some were cautious. Some were intrigued. But a handful were ready to act. One of them was David Carter, an investigative reporter at the New York Times. His email was short and direct. If what you're saying is true, we need to act fast. I want an exclusive interview tonight. Location. Laura grinned. We've got our guy. She typed back a response, giving him the address of a secure location. This was just the beginning. The online press conference. Laura didn't want to rely on just one journalist. She knew Cross had influence. If he could silence government officials, he could certainly silence the media. So, they needed to reach the public directly. She set up a live-streamed press conference, broadcasting it across YouTube, Twitter, X, Facebook Live, major news websites. The title? The Truth About New Horizons, the Experiment That Stole Our Lives. Olivia's hands trembled as she adjusted her microphone. This was it. Millions of people would be watching. And once they spoke, there would be no way for Cross to cover it up. The press conference begins. As the live stream went live, the viewer count skyrocketed within minutes. 10,000 viewers, 100,000 viewers, 1 million viewers. By the time Olivia stepped up to the microphone, over 3.2 million people were watching. She took a deep breath. Then she began. My name is Olivia Reed, and my life is a lie. A hush fell over the chat. 16 years ago, I was stolen from my real family as part of an illegal experiment. Hannah Mitchell, my biological sister, was also taken. Gasps erupted in the comment section. The chat was flooding with messages. Is this real? Who the hell is responsible for this? This is insane. Someone needs to stop these people. Olivia continued. We were part of a secret program called New Horizons, funded by billionaire Nathaniel Cross and protected by corrupt officials. They have been manipulating genetics, switching infants at birth, and conducting illegal human experiments for decades. Hannah stepped forward, her voice shaking but firm. We have proof, real proof, and we are sharing it with the world today. Laura pulled up the damning video onto the live broadcast. The footage played in real time, showing Cross calmly admitting to bribing government officials and conducting experiments on infants. The world reacts. The internet exploded. CNN breaking news. Shocking allegations against billionaire Nathaniel Cross, secret experiment unveiled. Fox News. New Horizons scandal, did the government know? The Washington Post. Illicit genetic engineering program exposed. The hashtag New Horizons exposed trended worldwide within minutes. Celebrities, politicians, and activists weighed in. Senator Daniel Clark tweeted, "This is beyond horrifying. A full investigation must be launched immediately." A-list actress Emily Carter posted, "This makes my skin crawl. How is this even possible?" Elon Musk tweeted, If this is true, it's one of the biggest crimes in human history. Cross's immediate response. It didn't take long for Nathaniel Cross to respond. Within 20 minutes, a carefully worded press release appeared on social media. These allegations are baseless and completely false. The so-called evidence presented tonight is misleading and taken out of context. My legal team will be pursuing action against all parties involved in this slanderous attack. But people weren't buying it. The comment sections under his statement were flooded with rage. You think we're stupid? We saw the video. Lawsuit? Bro, you're going to prison. Expose this man. Shut him down. The tide had turned against Cross. The threat increases. But Olivia, Hannah, and Laura weren't safe yet. As they packed up from the press conference, Laura's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. A low, menacing voice spoke. Do you really think you've won? A chill ran down Olivia's spine. You can't stop this, the voice continued. We own the law. We own the system. And we will come for you. The call ended abruptly. The room fell into silence. Hannah swallowed hard. What do we do now? Laura's jaw clenched. We keep going. We make sure Cross never recovers from this. Olivia's fist tightened. And we make sure he pays for everything he's done. Because now, the whole world was watching. And there was no turning back. Cross betrayed by his own allies. The pressure builds. Nathaniel Cross had spent his life controlling people. With money. With power. With fear. But now, none of it seemed to matter. The world had seen the truth. The evidence was undeniable. Media outlets were running nonstop coverage on the New Horizons scandal. Government agencies were suddenly under scrutiny. And politicians who once supported Cross, they were scrambling to distance themselves. Because now, being associated with him was political suicide. And worse, his own people were turning against him. The first betrayal. It started with a quiet resignation. Dr. Stephen Adler, a high-ranking scientist at New Horizons, suddenly stepped down. No explanation, no press statement, just a formal notice of resignation submitted overnight. But people noticed. Journalists swarmed him outside his home, demanding answers. At first, he said nothing. But then, after days of relentless pressure, Adler finally cracked. In an exclusive CNN interview, he sat down with investigative journalist David Carter. His hands trembled as he removed his glasses. The world deserves to know the truth, he whispered. A shocking confession. The interview was broadcasted live. Millions of people tuned in. And when Adler began speaking, the world went silent. I was part of it, he admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. I was one of the lead scientists at New Horizons. And yes, everything you've heard is true. The interviewer leaned forward. You're saying Cross really experimented on children? Adler swallowed hard. Yes, we genetically altered hundreds of infants. We manipulated their DNA to enhance intelligence, physical abilities, sometimes even appearance. A collective gasp filled the comment section. The journalist pressed on. And did the parents know? Adler's hands clenched into fists. He shook his head. No, they were lied to. Cross made them believe they were part of an advanced medical study, nothing more. The world erupted in outrage. Breaking news. New Horizons insider admits to illegal human experimentation. Trending hashtag. Hashtag Cross must pay. White House releases a statement. This is a national crisis. The domino effect. As Adler's confession spread, others followed. More scientists. More insiders. Even a former government official who had helped cover up Cross's crimes came forward. On live television, she made a chilling statement. If I had known the extent of it, I would have never signed off on those documents. She took a shaky breath. New Horizons isn't just a research facility. It's a crime syndicate. And Cross, he's its kingpin. The walls around Nathaniel Cross were crumbling. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't in control. Cross tries to fight back. But Cross wasn't going down without a fight. His legal team rushed to deny the accusations. He threatened lawsuits against every media outlet that aired Adler's confession. He accused Olivia and Hannah of fabricating the entire story. But it was too late. Public opinion had already turned against him. Politicians who once stood by him were now calling for his arrest. The stock value of his multi-billion-dollar company plummeted overnight. And worst of all, his own security team abandoned him. They knew his empire was collapsing, and no one wanted to go down with him. The final betrayal. 2 days later, the biggest bombshell dropped. A leaked phone recording surfaced. It was a conversation between Cross and his closest advisor. In the call, Cross laughed coldly as he dismissed the growing controversy. "Let them talk," he sneered. "They won't do a damn thing. Money always wins." But then, the advisor spoke, his voice uneasy. "Sir, I think it's time to consider an exit strategy. The board is panicking." Cross's tone turned sharp. "Don't be ridiculous. We own the government. We own the system. They won't touch us." The advisor hesitated. Then he dropped a chilling question. "What about the kids?" Silence. Then Cross laughed again. "What about them? They were just experiments. Nothing more." The world froze. The recording went viral instantly. It was over. The arrest warrant. That night, the Department of Justice issued a formal arrest warrant for Nathaniel Cross. Criminal charges filed. Illegal human experimentation. Fraud and conspiracy. Bribery of government officials. Endangerment of minors. Cross had gone from a powerful billionaire to a wanted fugitive overnight. The FBI raided his mansion in the early hours of the morning. But he was gone. Nathaniel Cross had disappeared. And now, a global manhunt had begun. Olivia and Hannah's reaction. As news of Cross's disappearance broke, Olivia and Hannah sat together in stunned silence. After everything, after all the danger, after nearly losing their lives, the man responsible was still free. Laura Hayes placed a comforting hand on their shoulders. "This isn't over," she said. "Not yet." Hannah clenched her fists. "We exposed him. That's not enough. We need to make sure he faces justice." Olivia nodded. "We're not stopping until Cross is behind bars." Because now, it wasn't just about their stolen identities. It was about every single child Cross had experimented on. And they wouldn't rest until they saw this monster finally fall. Cross cornered. The fall of a giant. For decades, Nathaniel Cross had lived untouchable. He had built an empire of money, power, and deception. But now, it was all collapsing around him. The truth about New Horizons was out. The government had turned against him. His most loyal allies had betrayed him. And worst of all, the world was watching. People were furious. Victims of New Horizons were speaking out. Mass protests broke out across the country. Social media exploded with demands for justice. News channels played Cross's leaked phone call on repeat. And as the FBI prepared to storm his headquarters, Cross made his move. The escape plan. Cross was not a man who accepted defeat. And he had one final card to play. From a private underground bunker, he made a call. Not to his lawyers, not to his investors, but to his private security team. "Get me out. Now." Within hours, a black helicopter landed on the rooftop of his mansion. Cross boarded the aircraft, carrying only a single briefcase. Inside, millions of dollars in untraceable cash. A fake passport. Encrypted documents revealing New Horizons' most dangerous secrets. He wasn't just escaping. He was planning to rebuild. Somewhere far away. Somewhere the law couldn't reach him. The FBI response. But the United States government wasn't done with him yet. Within minutes of his escape, the FBI issued a global arrest warrant. Interpol alert Nathaniel Cross, wanted for crimes against humanity. Every airport, seaport, and border checkpoint was alerted. Every major intelligence agency was put on high alert. The manhunt was on. And this time, Cross had nowhere to hide. The victims fight back. Meanwhile, the victims of New Horizons were not staying silent. Outside government buildings, massive crowds gathered. Thousands of people holding signs that read justice for the stolen children. Survivors stepping forward, sharing their stories on live television. Human rights activists calling for Cross to be tried in the International Criminal Court. The pressure was mounting. If Cross thought he could disappear quietly, he was dead wrong. A deadly betrayal. But then, something unexpected happened. As Cross's helicopter flew over international waters, his pilot suddenly spoke. "Sir, there's been a change of plans." Cross's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" The pilot glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Then he smiled. "You're not going anywhere." Suddenly, The helicopter tilted sharply. The emergency alarm blared. Cross was thrown against the seat. Before he could react, a second man entered the cockpit. It was one of his bodyguards. Or so he thought. The man pulled out a gun and aimed it directly across his head. "Time's up," he said. Cross froze. For the first time in his life, he was truly afraid. Captured. The pilot turned the aircraft around. Their destination? The FBI's headquarters. It was a setup. Cross had been betrayed by his own people. As soon as the helicopter landed, federal agents swarmed the aircraft. Cross was pulled out, kicking and screaming. Cameras flashed as he was handcuffed and dragged into a police vehicle. The once powerful billionaire was now just another criminal in an orange jumpsuit. The world watched in disbelief. But Olivia and Hannah? They watched with satisfaction. Because finally, justice was being served. The trial of the century. Cross's arrest sent shockwaves across the world. But the battle wasn't over. Now, he had to stand trial. The U.S. government charged him with heavy checkmark human trafficking, heavy checkmark illegal genetic experimentation, heavy checkmark child endangerment, heavy checkmark mass conspiracy. The media called it the trial of the century. The courtroom was packed with victims and journalists. And for the first time, Cross had no power. No lawyers could save him. No money could buy his way out. Verdict: guilty on all counts. The judge's voice echoed through the chamber. "Nathaniel Cross, you're sentenced to life in federal prison without parole." The world erupted in cheers. The nightmare was finally over. Olivia and Hannah's final victory. As Cross was led away in handcuffs, Olivia and Hannah stood outside the courthouse. Reporters swarmed them. "How do you feel now that Cross has been brought to justice?" Hannah took a deep breath. "We fought for the truth, and we won." Olivia nodded. "But this isn't just about us. It's about every child who was stolen, every family that was broken, and every person who was silenced." She looked straight into the cameras. "We will never stop fighting for justice." The crowd erupted into applause. And as the sun set over the courthouse, Olivia and Hannah finally felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Because for the first time in their lives, they were truly free. A final warning. The aftermath. The world was still buzzing from the downfall of Nathaniel Cross. His arrest and conviction had sent shockwaves through governments, corporations, and research institutions. News stations ran nonstop coverage of the trial. Documentaries exposed the horrors of New Horizons. Survivors were stepping forward with their own stories. But for Olivia and Hannah, this was supposed to be the end. They had uncovered the truth. They had fought against an empire, and they had won. Now, they just wanted to move on. But that was never going to happen. A chilling message. One night, Olivia was alone in her apartment. The city outside was quiet, peaceful. She finally felt like she could breathe again. Then, her laptop pinged with a new email. Sender: unknown. She frowned. The subject line was blank. Her fingers hovered over the mouse. Then, curiosity got the better of her. She clicked. Inside the email was just one sentence. Cross was never the real enemy. Her heart stopped. She read the message again. "You've only uncovered the tip of the iceberg." Her breath caught in her throat. Who sent this? What did they mean? Before she could react, her phone buzzed. It was Hannah. "Olivia, I just got an email from an unknown sender." "Me too," Olivia whispered. A cold shiver ran down her spine. Who else was involved? Olivia and Hannah met up at a coffee shop the next morning. The weight of the email hung between them. Hannah's hands shook as she held her coffee cup. Cross was the mastermind, right? He was the one running everything. Olivia's jaw clenched. That's what we thought. But now they weren't so sure. What if Cross was just a puppet? What if someone else had been pulling the strings? What if New Horizons was just a small piece of something much bigger? They needed answers, and that meant digging deeper. A cryptic lead. They decided to trace the email. Laura Hayes, their journalist ally, helped them. She ran the message through encryption trackers. After hours of searching, she frowned. It was sent through a highly sophisticated server. Someone wanted to cover their tracks. Olivia's stomach twisted. "Can you break through it?" Laura hesitated. "I can try. But whoever sent this, they know what they're doing." That only made it scarier. If this person wasn't afraid to contact them, it meant they wanted Olivia and Hannah to keep looking. But why? The hidden file. Just as they were about to give up, Laura's computer pinged. Wait, I found something. A hidden metadata file was attached to the email. She opened it, and what they saw made their blood run cold. It was a list of names, hundreds of them. Doctors, politicians, CEOs, military officials, and at the very bottom, the name of a U.S. senator. Hannah's voice trembled. New Horizons was funded by the government. Laura leaned forward, her expression dark. It looks that way. Olivia's fingers clenched into fists. We thought Cross was the end of it. But this is so much bigger. A bigger conspiracy. If what they found was true, then New Horizons wasn't just a rogue experiment. It was part of a global operation, an underground network of power and control. And Cross, he had just been a pawn. How deep did this go? How many other children had been experimented on? Who else was profiting from these illegal experiments? There was only one way to find out, and that was to keep digging, even if it meant putting themselves in more danger. The final choice. Laura exhaled, rubbing her temples. We have two options. We can walk away. Forget we ever saw this. She looked at Olivia and Hannah. Or we expose them all. Silence. Then, Hannah set her jaw. We don't walk away. Olivia nodded. Not this time. Because now, it wasn't just about them. It was about every single person who had suffered because of this experiment. And they weren't going to stop until they uncovered the full truth, even if it meant risking everything. A final warning. That night, Olivia was in her apartment. She sat in the dark, staring at her laptop. The email still sat in her inbox. She felt like she was being watched, like someone was waiting. Then, a shadow moved outside her window. Her pulse spiked. She grabbed her phone and texted Hannah. Are you safe? Yes. What? Olivia hesitated. Was she just paranoid? Or was this just the beginning of something even worse? She swallowed hard, because deep down, she knew the truth. Cross was only the beginning, and the real nightmare was still ahead. The truth behind New Horizons. Tracing Cross's final hideout. The war against New Horizons wasn't over. Even though Olivia and Hannah had exposed the truth, even though Cross had been unmasked, there was still one final loose end. Cross had disappeared. Interpol and the FBI had issued an international arrest warrant. But he had vanished without a trace. Where was he? How had someone so powerful escaped so easily? And, more importantly, had they really shut down New Horizons? Or was the organization still operating in the shadows? A new lead emerges. Laura Hayes, the journalist who had helped them blow the case open, received an encrypted email. The sender? Unknown. The message? One single line. Cross isn't hiding. He's rebuilding. Attached to the email was a set of coordinates. Zurich, Switzerland, a small private medical facility nestled in the mountains. It was owned by a shell corporation. But after digging deeper, Laura uncovered the real owner, Nathaniel Cross. He was there, running an even more secretive operation. And that meant only one thing. New Horizons wasn't dead. It had simply moved. A risky decision. Olivia and Hannah sat in Laura's office, staring at the computer screen. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, Hannah broke the silence. If Cross is still operating, we have to stop him. Olivia nodded. We can't let him disappear again. But this was different from before. They weren't just exposing a scandal anymore. They were going after a man who was on the run. A man who had everything to lose. And that made him dangerous. Laura leaned forward, her eyes sharp. If we do this, there's no turning back. A long pause. Then Olivia exhaled. When have we ever turned back? The mission to Switzerland. Olivia, Hannah, and Laura boarded a flight to Zurich. It felt surreal. Months ago, they were just two normal teenage girls. Now, they were chasing a fugitive billionaire across the world. As the plane touched down, Laura turned to them. We only get one shot at this. She had arranged for a trusted contact to meet them, an ex-intelligence agent named Julian West. Julian had spent years tracking criminal organizations, and he had his own personal vendetta against Cross. Inside the facility, Julian helped them infiltrate the facility. It was disguised as a high-end medical research center. To the outside world, It looked like a luxury clinic. But behind locked doors, horrors awaited. The darkest secret yet. Inside, they found something worse than they ever imagined. New Horizons wasn't just experimenting on babies anymore. They were testing on fully grown humans. Men, women, children, all locked inside glass rooms. Wires connected to their heads. For drips filled with unknown substances. Their eyes vacant. Their bodies motionless. Olivia felt sick. Hannah covered her mouth. Laura whispered, "My God, they never stopped." Cross's final move. And then, the alarms blared. They had been discovered. Armed guards rushed into the halls. Julian pulled out a stolen security badge. "We have to move. Now." But then, a voice echoed through the speakers. Going somewhere. It was Nathaniel Cross, watching them from a surveillance room. He smirked. "You really thought you could stop me?" Olivia's hands shook with rage. Hannah's heart pounded. Cross wasn't running anymore. He was ready for them. The final chase. Julian led them through the facility's underground tunnels. Guards chased them down the corridors. Gunshots echoed. Security doors slammed shut. They had one shot at escaping. And just when they thought they were trapped, a helicopter engine roared overhead. Cross was escaping. Olivia and Hannah locked eyes. They had come too far to let him get away. A desperate leap. As Cross's helicopter lifted off, Olivia made a split-second decision. She ran toward the rooftop. Julian shouted after her. But she didn't stop. She leaped. For a moment, she was weightless. Then, she grabbed onto the landing gear of the helicopter. She dangled above the city. Cross's eyes widened in shock. "You just don't give up, do you?" Olivia gritted her teeth. "Never." The final confrontation. Cross kicked at her hands. But she held on. The helicopter swayed dangerously. Then, a gunshot. Hannah had fired from the rooftop. The bullet hit the engine. Smoke poured from the helicopter. Cross's eyes filled with panic. He reached for a parachute. But before he could escape, the helicopter spiraled downward. It crashed into the icy Swiss mountains. Is it finally over? Silence. Olivia stumbled back. Hannah lowered the gun. Laura exhaled sharply. Was it finally over? Or was it just beginning? As they watched the wreckage burn, Julian's phone buzzed. A new message. No sender. Just 3 words. "He's still alive." Olivia's stomach dropped. Hannah's hands went cold. Laura whispered, "Then we keep hunting." Because as long as Cross was alive, the nightmare wasn't over yet. A power greater than Cross. A secret organization more powerful than Cross. The victory felt hollow. Cross was gone, his empire exposed, and New Horizons was in ruins. But something didn't feel right. The messages, the threats, the warning from the anonymous email. Cross wasn't the only one behind this. You've only seen the tip of the iceberg. A mysterious contact. A week after their escape from Switzerland, Olivia, Hannah, and Laura were hiding in a safe house. Julian had vanished. Interpol had frozen New Horizons assets. But the danger was far from over. One night, Laura's laptop flashed with an incoming encrypted message. Unknown sender. Anonymous network. Urgent. Laura hesitated, then clicked open. A single line appeared on the screen. "Meet me. Midnight. East Warehouse. Come alone." Attached was a location pin on an abandoned dockyard near the coast. The encounter. They knew it was dangerous. But if this person had real answers, they couldn't ignore it. Under the cover of night, Olivia, Hannah, and Laura made their way to the warehouse. The air was cold. The docks were empty. But as they stepped inside, a laptop screen flickered to life on a table. A distorted voice filled the air. "You think you've won, haven't you?" Laura's jaw tightened. "Who are you?" The voice laughed softly. "I'm someone who used to work for them." A series of files popped up on the laptop screen. Lines of classified documents. Blueprints. Experiment logs. The Genesis Initiative. The voice continued. New Horizons was never the real threat. It was just a small project. A prototype. The real mastermind is something far, far bigger. A new document appeared. The Genesis Initiative. Laura's eyes widened. Hannah's breath hitched. The Genesis Initiative was the true power behind New Horizons. They weren't just experimenting on babies. They weren't just switching newborns. They were designing an entire generation. A new species of human beings. Stronger, smarter, more obedient, genetically engineered to replace the rest of us. Cross was just a pawn. The voice explained. Cross, a puppet. He was just a scientist for hire, working under orders. Genesis had used him to test early-stage human modification projects. But when he failed, when the truth about New Horizons was leaked, Genesis cut him loose. They let him fall, because they had already moved on to something bigger. A horrifying revelation. Olivia's hand shook as she scrolled through the files. Hundreds of test subjects, names wiped from existence. Some of them had never even been registered as real people. They had been created, raised, and tested entirely off the grid. Laura whispered, "This isn't just genetic modification." She pointed at a file. Project Adam and Eve. It wasn't just human enhancement. They were creating an entirely separate species. A genetic class that would be stronger, more intelligent, and most disturbingly, completely controllable. No free will, no rebellion. A society where only the designed were allowed to thrive. And Genesis was already moving forward with Phase 2. The location of the next facility. The voice continued. They have a new facility, bigger than anything New Horizons ever had. They've gone underground, literally. The next stage of testing is happening in a classified facility beneath the Arctic. Laura's heart pounded. If they succeed, the world will never be the same again. A final warning. The voice paused, then whispered, "You don't understand what you're dealing with. They won't just kill you. They'll erase you." Then, the laptop screen glitched. The lights flickered, and the feed cut off. A single final message flashed across the screen. "Run." Then the laptop fried itself. Smoke curled into the air, and in the silence that followed, a noise outside. Footsteps. Engines roaring. They had been tracked. Genesis was already coming for them. Escape into the unknown. A car screeched to a stop in front of the warehouse. Armed men in black tactical gear stormed inside. Laura grabbed Olivia and Hannah's hands. "Run." They bolted through the side exit. Bullets ricocheted off the walls. A drone hovered overhead. They had to lose them. They had to disappear. Because now, the fight wasn't just about New Horizons. It was about the future of the human race. And Genesis wasn't going to let them live. The beginning of a new war. As they sped away into the night, Hannah whispered, "What do we do now?" Laura tightened her grip on the wheel. "We find them first." Olivia clenched her fists. "And we end this." Because this wasn't just about exposing a conspiracy anymore. It was a war. And the real battle had just begun. Infiltrating the secret facility. Exposing the Genesis initiative. The coordinates. A week had passed since the mysterious warning at the warehouse. Olivia, Hannah, Laura, and Reed had been on the run. Every move they made was monitored. Every step forward was met with resistance. But then, a new message appeared on their encrypted network. Coordinates, Geneva, Switzerland. Classified facility, Genesis initiative. Status, active. Human experimentation in progress. The source of the leak? The anonymous hacker. And the message was clear. If you want to stop them, this is your only chance. A mission of no return. The team gathered around a map. The Geneva facility was massive. Underground, heavily guarded, and completely off the grid. It was worse than New Horizons. The experiments hadn't stopped. They had only evolved. They weren't just looking to create genetically enhanced humans. They were building a new species. A future where only the genetically perfect would survive. Laura clenched her fists. If we don't stop this now, there won't be another chance. Recruiting an unlikely ally. Reed leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "This is suicide." Laura looked at him sharply. "So you're backing out?" Reed sighed. "I didn't say that. I just know what we're up against." Olivia and Hannah exchanged glances. Reed had once worked for Cross, but now he was their best shot at getting inside. He knew how they operated. He had access codes, old security clearances, information they needed. After a long pause, Reed sighed. "Fine, but if this goes wrong, we won't just be running from Genesis. We'll be running from the entire world. Breaking into Geneva's darkest secret. The plan: get past the surface-level security. Infiltrate the main research lab. Extract proof of the Genesis Initiative's experiments. Upload the data to a secure network before they get caught. It sounded simple. It wasn't. The infiltration begins. 11:47 p.m. Geneva, Switzerland. The facility was hidden beneath an abandoned medical research center. From the outside, it looked deserted. No security cameras. No guards. But inside, a fortress. Laura, Olivia, Hannah, and Reed approached through the side alley. Reed pressed a stolen security key card against the entrance panel. Access denied. Olivia's heart pounded. Reed frowned. Tried again. Access granted. The doors slid open. They were in, descending into the unknown. A single elevator. The team stepped inside. No buttons. No floor numbers. Just a retina scanner. Reed stepped forward. Here goes nothing. Beep. Access granted. The elevator began to descend. Faster and faster, until it stopped. The doors slid open, and what they saw made their blood run cold. The horror of Genesis Initiative. Rows of glass chambers. Inside people. Children. Teenagers. Adults. All unconscious. All with scars and injection marks running down their arms. Monitors displaying genetic sequences. Olivia whispered, "What is this?" A voice echoed from behind them. "This is the future." They turned and came face to face with Nathaniel Cross. A face-to-face with evil. Cross smiled. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Reed stepped forward. "You lost, Cross. New Horizons is done. The world knows what you did." Cross chuckled. "New Horizons? That was nothing. A test run." He gestured to the chambers behind him. This is the real project. We aren't just enhancing humans anymore. We're replacing them." Olivia shook with rage. "You're playing God." Cross laughed. "No, I'm correcting his mistakes." A deafening alarm blared. Security teams stormed the lab. They had to act fast. A desperate race against time. Laura sprinted to the main terminal, plugged in the USB, began downloading the files. Reed grabbed a stun gun, took down the first guard. Olivia and Hannah ran to the control panel. They needed to release the test subjects. But Cross just smiled. "Do you really think you can stop this? The Genesis Initiative isn't one facility. It's everywhere. You can't stop progress. You can't stop evolution. You can't stop us." The ultimate choice. The files were still downloading. Security forces were getting closer. They had two choices. Keycap 1, stay and fight, try to take down Cross for good. Keycap 2, run, escape with the evidence before it was too late. Olivia's hands trembled. They had come too far to fail now. But if they stayed too long, they wouldn't make it out alive. Laura shouted, "We have to go. Now." The download finished. Reed grabbed the USB. Laura hit the emergency lockdown. The test subjects began waking up. Chaos erupted, and the team ran. Escape and the fallout. A fire broke out in the lab. The facility shook. Cross screamed in rage. But Olivia, Hannah, Laura, and Reed reached the elevator. The door shut just as gunfire rang out behind them. They had done it. They had the proof. But was it enough? The beginning of the end. As they sped away from Geneva, Olivia whispered, "We stopped one facility. But how many more are out there?" Laura stared at the USB in her hands. This is just the beginning. Because Genesis Initiative wasn't just a company. It was a movement. And the real battle had just begun. Part 24. Face to face with the masterminds. 24.1. The confrontation with the true leader. The dimly lit control room was nothing like what Olivia and Hannah had imagined. Rows of high-tech monitors lined the walls, displaying a complex web of genetic data, biometric scans, and surveillance footage of different facilities across the world. The air was thick with an eerie silence, as if the entire room was holding its breath. As they stepped forward, the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps echoed through the chamber. From the shadows emerged a tall, poised woman dressed in an elegant yet severe black suit. Her silver hair was neatly pulled back, and her piercing gray eyes assessed them with a calculated gaze. "Welcome," she said smoothly, her voice laced with an unsettling confidence. "I was wondering when you'd finally make it here." Laura instinctively positioned herself between the girls and the woman. her investigative instincts screaming that they were in the presence of someone far more dangerous than they had anticipated. Evelyn Rothschild, Reed muttered, recognizing her instantly. The real power behind Genesis Initiative. Evelyn smiled at him as if amused. Oh, Reed, you disappoint me. I had such high hopes for you. Olivia clenched her fists. You're the one who's been behind all of this, aren't you? The DNA experiments, the child swaps, the genetic modifications you played with human lives as if they were your personal test subjects. Evelyn tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Oh dear, don't be so dramatic. We're not playing with lives. We are perfecting them. Do you think the world we live in is built on fairness? Strength and intelligence are what drive progress. Humanity is flawed, weak, diseased, inefficient. What we do here is not destruction. It's creation. Her words sent chills down Olivia's spine. The sheer detachment, the way she spoke about life as though it were just a puzzle to be optimized, it was terrifying. People are not projects. Hannah spoke up, her voice trembling with anger. You're treating children like lab rats. You stole them from their real families, experimented on them without consent, and played God. Evelyn let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. Oh, you sweet, naive child. Consent? Tell me, do parents ask for their children's consent before vaccinating them? Before deciding which schools they attend? Before shaping their entire lives? The world is already controlled by those who have power. We are simply ensuring that the future belongs to those worthy of it. Laura stepped forward. And who decides who is worthy? She demanded. You? A group of scientists hiding behind wealth and power? The same people who manipulated an entire generation of children. Evelyn sighed, as if she were growing bored of the conversation. You journalists, she mused, always so obsessed with the idea of exposing the truth. She gestured to the screens around them. You think the world would care if you revealed everything? Do you really believe the governments that fund us will allow this information to be made public? We don't just have power, Ms. Hayes. We own it. That's when Olivia saw the undeniable arrogance in Evelyn's eyes, the certainty that she was untouchable. And that made Olivia furious. You don't get to decide who lives and who doesn't, she shot back. You act like you're building a better world, but all you're doing is playing with people's lives to serve your own twisted vision. Evelyn's smirk faded slightly, but she didn't lose her composure. And what do you intend to do about it? 24.2. A desperate gamble. Laura took a deep breath, then pulled out her phone. We're already broadcasting this conversation live. Evelyn's confident demeanor faltered for a brief second. Her gaze flickered to the security monitors, and sure enough, one of the screens displayed a live news feed. Thousands know. Millions of viewers were watching. You should really update your cybersecurity, Laura continued. Your entire monologue about controlling the future just went public. And trust me, people don't take kindly to secret organizations playing God. Evelyn's fingers twitched slightly, a controlled gesture of annoyance. You think that changes anything? It changes everything, Olivia said firmly. Your empire of secrecy? It's crumbling. People know now. Governments might have protected you before, but after tonight, you're too public, too exposed. A new alarm rang through the facility. Evelyn's expression darkened as her security team flooded into the room, their weapons raised. Enough, she snapped. Arrest them. Reed stepped in front of the group, his own weapon drawn. I don't think so, he countered. We're walking out of here, and you're coming with us. Evelyn let out a small chuckle. Do you really think I'd allow myself to be taken in so easily? Then, with a single movement, she pressed a button on her wristwatch. The lights flickered, and the entire facility went into lockdown mode. Congratulations, she said, stepping back towards an emergency exit. You've made things quite inconvenient for me. But this game isn't over. It's only just begun. Before anyone could stop her, a hidden door slid open behind her, revealing an escape route. In a flash, she disappeared into the darkness. The room was now in chaos. Security forces swarmed toward them, sirens blared, and the monitors began wiping data automatically. Genesis Initiative was erasing all traces of their work. Laura grabbed Olivia's hand. We need to get out of here now. Reed fired a few warning shots to slow the guards down as the group sprinted out of the control room. "We can't let her escape," Olivia shouted. "We don't have a choice." Hannah yelled back. "If we stay, we'll be caught too." Evelyn was gone for now. But this wasn't the end. Olivia knew that deep in her heart. The truth was out. But Genesis Initiative wasn't finished yet. And the war for the future of humanity had only just begun. The fall of Genesis Initiative. The alarms blared like a screaming siren of impending doom. The entire underground facility shook as explosions rocked the hallways, sending tremors through the cold steel walls. Olivia's heart pounded against her ribcage as she ran alongside Hannah, dodging fallen debris and the chaos unfolding around them. They had made their choice. They weren't going to surrender. They weren't going to let Genesis Initiative continue its monstrous experiments. And now, there was no turning back. A mission of no return. "Reed, how much time do we have?" Olivia shouted over the noise. Reed was typing furiously into a control panel, sweat beading at his temple. "A few minutes before the system locks me out completely," he grunted. "I've managed to corrupt most of their files, but I need one last push to delete their entire database permanently." Hannah ducked as a piece of metal piping fell from the ceiling. "Can you make it faster?" she urged. "Not unless you want to screw this up and leave some of their research intact," Reed snapped. Laura was at the far end of the room, frantically uploading the final files onto a secure server. "The evidence is almost out," she called. "We've got copies of everything. Genetic trials, forced DNA modifications, child abductions. This is the end for Genesis." The weight of those words hit Olivia hard. This was what they had fought for. This was what they had risked their lives to uncover. And now, they were finally taking it all down. But then she saw her, standing near a reinforced emergency exit, watching the destruction with cold, calculating eyes. Evelyn Rothschild, face to face with the puppet master. Olivia didn't hesitate. She sprinted forward, ignoring the pain in her legs, ignoring the burning in her lungs. She had come too far to let Evelyn escape. Evelyn noticed her approach but didn't move. Instead, she simply watched, a ghost of a smirk on her lips. "Do you truly think this changes anything?" she asked, her voice calm despite the chaos. "This is over," Olivia hissed, her fists clenched. "You're finished." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "Am I?" she mused. "Because from where I stand, you're merely a child playing a game you don't understand." Hannah appeared beside Olivia, her breathing ragged. "We destroyed your files. Your research. Your entire operation is crumbling around you." Evelyn let out a soft chuckle. "And yet, you failed to realize," she said, stepping closer, "Genesis was never about a single facility. This is global. You think you've won, but all you've done is delay the inevitable." Olivia's hands trembled with rage. "We have proof. The world will know." Evelyn's eyes glinted with something almost pitying. "And what makes you think the world cares?" she asked. "Do you think governments will suddenly turn against us? Do you think the powerful people funding us will simply abandon their vision for the future?" Olivia hesitated for half a second, and that was all Evelyn needed. She pulled a small device from her pocket and pressed a button. Suddenly, the monitors flickered to life, revealing a map, red dots blinking across major cities all over the world. "This isn't the end," Evelyn murmured. "This is only the beginning. The last stand." "Olivia!" Reed shouted from across the room. "We're out of time." Laura had finished the uploads. The data had been sent. The evidence was secured. But the facility was still active, and the destruction wasn't complete. Reed activated the final sequence. A countdown appeared on the screens. 60 seconds until complete system shutdown. Evelyn stepped backward toward the emergency exit, her composure unwavering. "I do admire your persistence," she admitted. "But you're too late." A low rumble vibrated beneath their feet. A hidden self-destruct sequence. "She's setting the place to blow," Laura realized, eyes wide. Evelyn gave them a final, knowing look. "You may have won a battle, but the war?" She smirked. "The war is still mine." She disappeared through the exit, just as Olivia lunged forward. but the reinforced door slammed shut in her face. She was gone. For now. But there was no time to dwell on it. The walls were collapsing. The mainframe was frying. Sparks flew from the ceiling as a chain reaction of explosions began to unravel the very core of Genesis Initiative's facility. "We have to go," Reed yelled, saving the children. Olivia turned to Hannah. "The kids. They're already being evacuated," Laura shouted as she helped guide several frightened children through an escape route. "We can't save them all, but we save enough." It wasn't fair. It wasn't enough. But it was all they could do. They had to leave. Now, the final escape. The countdown hit 10 seconds as they sprinted through the halls. The emergency exit was just ahead. 5 seconds. The walls groaned as the ceiling began to collapse. 2 seconds. They leaped through the exit just as the entire underground facility erupted in a violent explosion. The impact sent them tumbling onto the gravel outside. Heat scorched their backs as fire consumed what was left of Genesis Initiative's stronghold. It was gone, burned to the ground. They had done it. But what cost? The fallout. As the fire raged behind them, Olivia sat up, chest heaving. Hannah clutched her arm, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. Laura and Reed were both coughing, catching their breath. It was over. But deep down, Olivia knew Evelyn was still out there. Genesis wasn't completely destroyed. And that meant one thing. They weren't safe. Not yet. Laura pulled out her phone. The files are everywhere now. The press is all over it. Genesis Initiative is officially exposed. But Olivia barely heard her, because in her hand, her phone buzzed with an unknown message. She hesitated before reading it. One sentence. One warning. "You think you won?" This was only the beginning. A chill ran through Olivia's veins. She looked at Hannah. "We're not done yet," she whispered. Hannah swallowed hard. "I know. The fight wasn't over. And they would be ready. A new chapter begins." The sky was painted in hues of amber and violet as the sun dipped below the horizon. The world outside seemed peaceful, an ironic contrast to the war Olivia and Hannah had fought against Genesis Initiative. The dust had barely settled from the battle, but the consequences of their actions were already rippling across the globe. The truth was out, but was justice truly served? The fall of Nathaniel Cross. It was breaking news across every major channel. Billionaire scientist Nathaniel Cross apprehended at Austrian border. The headlines flooded the media, exposing Cross for what he truly was: not a visionary scientist, but a criminal responsible for human experimentation, genetic modification, and forced child separation. His face, once a symbol of prestige and power in the scientific community, was now plastered across the world as a fugitive turned prisoner. He had almost escaped. Authorities in Vienna confirmed that Cross had used multiple fake identities, attempting to flee into Russia, where he had connections to secret underground labs. But his luck had run out. His own allies, seeing him as a liability, had abandoned him. When he was captured, he was no longer the confident mastermind. He once was just a man in a cheap disguise, desperate to outrun the truth. As he was led into the courtroom for his hearing, reporters bombarded him with questions. "Do you regret what you did? What about the children you experimented on? What do you have to say to the world?" Cross, ever the strategist, remained silent. But the evidence was undeniable. His trial was swift, with overwhelming proof of his crimes presented to the court. The leaked documents, the testimonies from former Genesis scientists, and the harrowing stories of victims sealed his fate. The verdict? Life imprisonment without parole. For many, it was a moment of triumph. The monster behind the Genesis Initiative was finally behind bars. But for Olivia and Hannah, it was only one battle in a much larger war. The crumbling of Genesis Initiative. Though Cross was gone, Genesis Initiative was far from destroyed. The organization was built on layers of secrecy, with multiple branches operating worldwide. Their influence stretched beyond a single man. But Olivia and Hannah's exposure of their crimes had sent shockwaves through the underground scientific world. Then came the final blow. Evelyn Rothschild's identity was leaked. The woman who had lurked in the shadows, orchestrating the grand design of human genetic evolution, was now a hunted figure. No longer protected by anonymity, Evelyn had lost the very thing that made her dangerous, her invisibility. Financial backers pulled their support. Governments that once turned a blind eye were now forced to act. The Geneva facility had been destroyed, and the entire world was watching. Genesis Initiative was crippled, but not dead. There were whispers of underground movements, of scientists regrouping, of new names rising in the absence of Cross and Evelyn. Evil doesn't just disappear, Laura had warned. It mutates, and Olivia knew she was right. A new purpose. Despite everything, Olivia and Hannah refused to see themselves as victims. They had survived. They had uncovered the truth. But there were still so many others who hadn't. That's when the letters started coming in. Emails, phone calls, messages from people across the world, families searching for lost loved ones, individuals questioning their own origins, parents desperate for answers about children they had lost years ago. It was bigger than just them. And that's when they knew what they had to do. Olivia and Hannah became the voice of the forgotten. Alongside Laura, they created an independent network, one dedicated to reuniting victims of genetic experimentation with their real families. They worked with journalists, DNA specialists, and legal teams, helping those who had been wronged by Genesis Initiative find closure. One by one, lost children were returned to their parents. One by one, the damage Genesis had inflicted on innocent lives was being undone. And slowly, Olivia and Hannah's names became something more than just survivors of a conspiracy. They became symbols of resistance. A final encounter. Months had passed. The world had begun to heal. But Olivia still had nightmares. She dreamed of the underground labs, of the children trapped in glass-walled rooms, of Evelyn Rothschild's chilling words. This is only the beginning. She would wake up breathless, hands clenched into fists, waiting for another attack. Waiting for Genesis to strike back. One evening, as she and Hannah were leaving a small conference where they had spoken about their experiences, Olivia's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart pounded. She hesitated before answering. Silence. Then, a voice she never thought she'd hear again. You did well. Olivia's blood turned to ice. Evelyn. But you're naive if you think you won. Evelyn continued, her voice smooth, unshaken. You may have exposed us, but power never truly disappears. It only changes hands. And you've made powerful enemies, my dear. Ones that don't forgive so easily. Olivia gripped the phone. You're finished. You're nothing but a fugitive now. Evelyn laughed softly. Am I? Or am I just waiting for the right moment to rise again? The call ended, and Olivia knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Epilogue. The fight never ends. As Olivia and Hannah walked out into the cool night air, they exchanged a look, one that didn't need words. They had come so far. They had won the battle. But the war? The war was still being fought, and they would be ready. Always. Wow, what a journey. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this intense, thrilling story. Tell us in the comments, what was the most shocking part for you? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Stories TH for more mind-blowing stories. See you in the next one.